Hello, everybody, and welcome to ADP Chasing. We have a lot to discuss today. Dalvin Cook finally was released. Mattison, Ty Chandler, and Dwayne McBride are shooting up draft boards, and the elite quarterbacks continue to slide. We'll break it all down here on ADP Chasing. Let's go.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase. Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally this boys. You're right.
Oh, there's Pat. So been waiting for months and months, guys. We kept hearing Dalvin Cook's going to be released. It took maybe a little bit longer than we thought, but finally got that post June 1st news on him. So, he's out. Curious what you think, Pat. How have you been treating the Mattison and Vikings running backs with Cook now gone?
Yeah, I misread the situation in terms of what the market would think. To me, I mean, Mattison's like kind of a very capable number 2 NFL back, but not all that good. I mean, he wasn't a particularly strong prospect. He's slow. He's been solid. He had 3rd-round draft capital, so it wasn't like, day 3 guy necessarily, but he's been pretty solid when given a shot. He can do everything. He's versatile. But he's kind of like a poor man's Josh Jacobs type of dude, or kind of a David Montgomery type of guy. Like, he's not someone I'd ever be excited to draft. I know this is like a pretty solid offense, probably maybe a borderline playoff team again. And they'll definitely run the ball still. I read an article, I think on The Athletic, where they were talking about how they're still going to run the ball. Like, this is not a team philosophy shift. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the fact that he's kind of jumped up very quickly I just misread that. I thought like this was kind of priced in. Like, I thought people realized Cook was gone because it seemed so obvious that he was going to be gone. But no, there was an additional bump here. So I should have taken more Mattison prior to the obvious Cook release. I don't think that I will take him again if he goes kind of in the like round 5 range. I just think he's like a quintessential dead zone back at that price. And I think, the reason that I don't like to take these backs one of the reasons is that they're susceptible to losing work as the season goes on. So if I'm going to be taking Mattison, like, I would be more inclined to do it in a format that doesn't have a 3-week sprint. So I think in particular in Best Ball Mania, he just strikes me as pretty unappealing.
So he's going right now, just to give some context, he's going right now at pick 65. That's ahead of guys like Swift, his former teammate Dalvin Cook, Cam Akers, Pacheco, and just behind guys like Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins. So that's
I think you can justify that, but it does seem like he's moving up. I saw some stuff right after that people saw him on like the 3-4 turn type of area. I don't think he'll settle there, but there was like a lot of optimism about how he should be like ahead of Miles Sanders in that crew. And if he does settle there, that's where I'm saying I probably won't have any.
Mm-hmm. Davis, what are your thoughts? What are your predictions for where he ultimately ends up, and will you be drafting him at all?
I've not taken him since the news. I was taking him before because I just thought it was so perfectly telegraphed what was going to happen. Yep. But I mean, exactly what we said was going to happen, which is whatever ETR's ranking is right about where he's going to get drafted. ETR ranked him running back 16. He's going right about running back 16 since the Dalvin Cook news. I prefer every dude who goes ahead of him except for Miles Sanders. I like Pierce more. I like Dobbins a lot more. I like Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon a lot more. My prediction the day it happened was that he would end up going where Kenneth Walker's going. We'll see. It'll really depend on, Ty Chandler. They really, Ty Chandler's doing everything the coaches ask. He's playing on 3rd downs. They're wait until we get the first. They're actually going to use Ty Chandler and Alexander Mattison together on the field at the same time. Gosh. Wait until we get that one. Then we'll see what happens. But I think, Pat, I mean, you forgot the first rule of fantasy football, which is that the community will like a guy until he burns them Alexander Mattison has never had a start in which he was bad. There's never been a time where you picked Mattison up off the waiver wire, where you held him all year and you started him and you got screwed, right? Now, I believe, I want to say maybe there was one start that he got hurt himself in, but by and large, I think his fantasy points per game in starts is like 19.5 or something.
Yeah,
like
half PPR, Davis. I have it pulled up. It's 18.5 and half PPR.
Yep.
I think he's had one dud start in there, but then a couple like huge smash starts. So like that, I think we should at least present the bull case for. I think I agree with you guys, but like let me do devil's
advocate. If he just gets Dalvin Cook's workload, he's mispriced by 2 rounds. Yeah,
exactly. And I do think that I largely agree with like the dead zone arguments. He's not a guy that we love his talent, but I mean, his back, it's not like we can get overly excited about these backups. So I don't know. I think like I would probably fairly price him at like pick 60. I think I'd have him just ahead of Sanders and just behind like Dobbins, Aaron Jones, Mixon. But like I do see a world where like, oh, we get so worried about, Ty Chandler, an undersized committee college back who got 0 offensive snaps last year until week 18. Dwayne McBride, who has the lowest yards per route run of any running back like ever in college. Like it's not like these backups are tremendously interesting. So I do see a world where he holds on to the job the whole year and is like a slight win at his price. But yeah, I mean,
we pretty much any running back in the league, I don't know. There's probably 50 running backs in the NFL where if you were to give them an 80% snap share, they would be a smash. And
yes.
he is in that group. If he has an 80% snap share all year, he's going to be the guy. But like, I guess the fact that he's been a smash in games where Dalvin Cook hasn't played, that's great. But we talk about that. One of the reasons that I like going zero running back or just kind of targeting these like anti-fragile type of running back guys is that a lot of times the backup will consolidate work when the starter goes down ahead of him. Or, you have like I imagine like AJ Dillon, if Aaron Jones would have missed time, AJ Dillon would get like a lot of work. But in a season where they didn't have Aaron Jones, would we expect AJ Dillon to get a ton of work, or we expect them to, figure out what the rotation is going to look like beyond just the main guy? So sometimes in season, the running back, the capable RB2 steps up, he handles everything. It's awesome, but that's not necessarily generalizable to an entire season. When they go into the season, knowing that the RB2 is now the RB1. So yeah, the bull case to me is he just gets 80% of the snaps and he just like kind of has the season Josh Jacobs had last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good season, right? I mean, it's a good season. The Vikings offense is pretty good. The question really is, does one of McBride and Nwangu or Ty Chandler make a serious case to be either, and it can go either way, right? So Nwangu and Chandler would sort of be like, they would take the third down work. And if that happened, that would not be good. The other thing that would not be good would be if Dwayne McBride becomes Jamal Williams, right? And both of those things would make Mattison more of a trap back. But I mean, to be fair to the market, you compare the guys who are going after him. Swift to me has like sub 10% chance of getting an RB1 workload. Maybe that might even be too high. Dalvin Cook, I think, completely left for dead. Akers, I mean, who knows what's going to go on with the Rams, right? I feel, and their offense might be way worse.
I auto drafted Akers with your star trick. I let it tick down. I like forgot. I've been drafting on a computer where I don't use it because it screws up my queue, and I've got like the spike week tool. So then on my phone, I switched over and I had Jerry Jeudy at a nice value in the 4th round, and I was just like doing something, and I was like letting it tick down. And it ticked down to 0, and 4th round Cam Akers popped up.
You gotta if you're gonna do the star all of the correlating players trick, you gotta really be on your game. You cannot be like I've learned that the hard way. Like doing one draft at a time, making dinner, walking the dogs, whatever. That's the GTO time to do the star everyone is when you're multi-tabling, when you're doing like 4 or 5 and you're doing cardio or just sitting on the couch or whatever. Cause you'll get, I mean, and I've had some terrible ones, Derek Derek Carr in the second round after you take Devontae. Like I've had some really, really bad ones. So it's definitely a little bit of a.
I had one last year where I was doing like the walking my dog, and I went through like a dead spot in cell service. I was up in Maine, and like sometimes where I'm living, like the cell service is trash. I think Justin Jefferson in the first, so start all the Vikings. Ended up getting like Adam Thielen auto drafted in the third, and I could like. The worst part too is I could see it coming. Like it wasn't that I looked away from my phone. Like the countdown
it's
was
that
going
you literally
down.
cannot click the button.
Yeah, and I was trying to click it, and I couldn't do anything about it, and just got Adam Thielen in the third. So, just a disaster. You got to be careful with that strategy.
But you'll get people on Twitter who will be like, I can't believe you do this. You wasted it's like. I'm pretty sure my guess is you're gaining much more EV by especially if you're multi-tabling, by knowing exactly who you need to click. Like if you're multi-tabling and you're not doing this, you're just going to draft uncorrelated teams. Your brain does not have enough capacity.
I love the starring strategy. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My feeling on that whole tier though, like I kind of like Dobbins. Dobbins, someone I don't think I've drafted him a ton, but he's one of the guys as I'm like reviewing what I've done. I'm like, I should probably take more Dobbins. I think there's scenarios where that offense is awesome, where he looks way better after, the second year after the multi-ligament tear. There's like upside scenarios I can see for Dobbins. I think like at his height, Dobbins was super talented. So, I kind of get on board with that. But I just am not taking a lot of these running backs. I mean, this is the dead zone to me. The Sanders, the Aaron Jones. I mean, they're priced a little bit lower than they have historically been. 3 years ago, these guys would have probably been like 4th round picks or whatever. But this is still a range where there's a lot of opportunity cost. Elite tight ends are often available in the 6th round now. I mean, 6th round Kittle has somehow become a thing. It's crazy. So I actually think there's
6th round Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I see 7th round Kyle Pitts now sometimes. Goddard's regularly in the 7th. I think the 6th and the 7th round are still coming with a lot of opportunity cost. And so I just don't have a lot of interest in taking any of these 6th round running backs. It's like Miles Sanders, I have very little of. So it's more of an overall type of thing for me rather than quibbling about, you should be before or after Sanders. Like I'm not drafting Sanders, so I don't really care,
Yeah, that's fair. The one guy I am drafting a little bit of recently in this range. Well, 2 guys. I am drafting Kenneth Walker. I think he's not really the typical dead zone profile because I mean there's a success rate stuff. We don't need to do that whole conversation, but I think his talent is awesome.
Success rate just doesn't understand Kenneth Walker's genius.
Yeah. They don't understand Kenneth Walker going for 70 touchdowns.
He does something really well. Like he is an incredible breakaway runner.
I take both Seattle running backs. I take
both. Yeah.
Not on the same teams, but
yeah, I mean, I've taken them both on the same team. I don't care, but
I think they're a direct bet against each other. I think
they are. But imagine if you had taken Walker and Penny on a bunch of teams together last year. You got like 5 baller ass weeks, and then you got Kenneth Walker closing the season.
Different really prices though. They were both in that single digit round.
Yeah.
I've done both I've done both like once, I think, because they both slipped past like a round past ADP. And I was like, at this point, sure, I think there's a world where this works out. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Like, I think for me, I will have absolutely 0 Mattison once he gets above Dobbins, Mixon, Walker, because I think, you can just make, I'm not drafting like a ton of those other guys, but I will never draft Mattison over those guys because I think the talent is just a lot better. Like the offensive ceiling for Cincinnati, Baltimore, Seattle, I think is a lot better than it is for Minnesota. So like I can kind of see above Sanders. Sanders' talent's probably better. Minnesota's offensive situation is probably better. Like I can maybe see why if you were forced to draft a running back there, which you never are, but if you're forced to, I can see going.
Yeah, you never are.
Yeah. Like the builds where I'll have Mattison and it won't be a lot is probably if I go lots of wide receivers, lots of quarterbacks, lots of tight ends early, and then Mattison slips like 8 picks past ADP. And then at that point, I think he can pay off if he's your first running back. I think his points will be more valuable there. So
that's what it is for me. If like I was in a draft where I had a lot of wide receivers, I didn't have a chance to get an elite quarterback, so I feel really good at wide receiver. Kittle and Pitts go. and like I don't have any Eagles, and I'm like I don't feel like taking Goddard here, and Mattison's like it's the end of the 6th round, and Mattison's sitting there. I'd be like, okay, that's a good price. I'll take him. That's what it would be. That's like sort of what Sanders is to me. So, whereas Dobbins, I'll sometimes take Dobbins in that like 5th, 6th turn area and feel okay.
Yeah,
I take Dobbins a lot with Lamar because Lamar is
like
if you miss out on Mark Andrews, he's kind of hard to correlate, and both Bateman and Zay it's hard to get both of them. Just the way
you can get one of them pretty easily.
You get one of them every time, right? But I mean, if you're taking a 3rd round quarterback, you'd like to have like 3 or 4 of his teammates, ideally, I think. And I mean, I will be chasing the ghost of Mark Ingram's 2019 season for the rest of my life, because that should have been Justice Hill. That Mark Ingram season should have been Justice Hill, and I'll never ever forget it.
I take some Gus Edwards too.
Yeah,
I mean, Gus Edwards is like, if that dude stays healthy for 17 games, you're getting 150 PPR points or half PPR points.
That sounds pretty.
I think the only thing you're dodging with Edwards is like I guess he's not fully healthy right now, and I think you're dodging them like signing one of these vets at this point. But I've still been taking him. Let's put the risers on the chart here. So these are the largest risers of the past week. Before we completely move on from the Mattison conversation, Ty Chandler is on this chart. Rose 16 spots in ADP. Davis, I'm curious if you are taking bets on the Minnesota running back 2, who is your favorite out of Chandler?
I'm trying to take Chandler. I'm trying to take Chandler every single time. Because I think he and Nwangu are like the same skill set, but Chandler I think is like the more effective. I mean, if you just look at their college stats, like Nwangu was like a scat back, punt returner, kick returner, just like insane athlete in college, and kind of in like a Jerick McKinnon style way, just taught himself how to play running back. Whereas Ty Chandler is just a running back. I mean, I don't know if he's like a great one, but he's like pretty athletic, 4.38 at 205 pounds. And the thing is, McBride, I think, is going to run into the Ronald Jones problem, where unless he figures out how to play special teams, if you're not the 3rd down specialist, you're just kind of like a running back, he's going to be the healthy scratch, right? Unless one of the other running backs ahead of him gets hurt. Whereas I think Chandler just should be active on game day as the 2nd running back, right? I mean, that's the way I would project it right now. And I think the market has not adjusted enough for some of this stuff yet. Like, Dalvin Cook is going to be a Miami Dolphin, but 3 Dolphins running backs all go ahead of Ty Chandler. And like one of these Dolphins backs is either going to get cut or is like not going to play at all. And it's
I've kind of stopped drafted. I'm not really drafting them right now.
I was taking a bunch of them early, saying like, well, this Dalvin Cook thing has kept going on, so maybe there's something to mine there. I mean, the other thing is Cook might just be absolutely like unplayable, like he might just be done. So maybe it doesn't matter to the Dolphins teams we've already drafted. But long-winded way of saying I'm pretty much taking Ty Chandler as my 5th or 6th running back, like every team I'm drafting right now, assuming someone else didn't take him, someone else didn't jumped him in the 16th round or whatever.
Yeah. Pat, what are your thoughts? Because I think I'm a little more into McBride, but curious what you think on the Vikings running back 2 situation.
I mean, if I was like a Vikings coach, I'd be way more intrigued by McBride. He's sort of a 2-down complement. In Mattison, the strength of what he brings is really versatility. And so I think McBride would be like a pretty interesting kind of Khalil Herbert type of guy, like a little bit of an explosive rushing element that you'd add. But we're not in charge of the Vikings. And I think what probably will happen is exactly what Davis laid out, which is, it's not just that McBride, I don't think is going to play a lot of special teams. It's that like Kenny Nwangu was like drafted to play special teams.
Teams.
That's what he does. That's why he's on the roster. So like he's going to be active. So now it comes down to Chandler versus McBride, and one of them is going to be inactive. And McBride missed the OTA period with I forget exactly what, but he wasn't around. So he's also day 3 rookie. He was like what, a 6th round pick. The odds are that he will not really see the field much this year. So I think Chandler's probably. I think I should be drafting more Chandler. I've been mixing him in at the end of drafts, but I like Davis's approach better.
Yeah. So I guess my pushback there is that I get that McBride is a late, 7th round pick as a rookie, but Chandler was also a day 3 pick last year who saw 0 offensive snaps until week 18. Like, I don't think we have any evidence that
that's very Vikings though, right? That's what they do. Like Mike Boone, great example of this. Like Mike Boone was pretty.
Well, that's a
decent
different
every
staff. That was a different staff.
Institutional memory,
Yeah.
bro.
But
Institutional memory.
anyways, I think my point is like I'm not saying I'm confident it's McBride, but like so the reason I'm probably not taking a ton of Chandler, especially if his price rises up, is I think the scenario you outlined for McBride being the healthy scratch could easily be Chandler. Like I don't know. I don't think we have any evidence that the Vikings like Chandler. Like they took him a round earlier, but I mean 0 offensive snaps until week 18 last year. Like I don't know, man. I don't think we have much signal about how.
Yeah, you can read it
as a player.
You can read it. You can read it whatever way you want.
You can.
For whatever it's worth, in the games that Ty Chandler was active for last year, he was a core 4 special teamer. So he was active in week 4. He played 19 special team snaps. He was active in week 5. He played 9 special team snaps, and he was active in week 18 and played 11 special team snaps, which means he was on punt, kickoff coverage, which is, I know it's really boring shit, but like this reading the tea leaves on special teams with 2nd and 3rd running backs is like an actual skill, right?
Yeah.
It's what I mean, it cost me money last year because I refused to read the tea leaves, but it's what led people to Pacheco early on was being like, well, he's going to be active for kick returns. And so it's like, Ronald Jones, what do you do here?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, that's a big thing that Chandler's got multiple outs being active. Although I guess you could say since Nwangu is going to be the kick returner, maybe they're just
so maybe we're actually reading it in reverse because your 3rd running back is locked in to being your special teamer. So maybe you just take the best running back for running back.
You certainly could.
And maybe that'll be McBride. I mean, McBride has
McBride certainly has a rusher profile is way
much
more
better.
McBride's profile as a rusher is the best thing any of these guys do if it translates. I mean, he did it at UAB, so who knows? But if he's that guy, I mean, his elusive rating was off the charts in college. He's like a fairly big. He's not huge, but he can be a guy that makes a guy miss or powers through a guy, and he's got some juice as a rusher as well. He kind of reminds me of like a Dameon Pierce type. Like he accelerates quickly. He has or Gus Edwards. He's got no final gear, but he can be someone who like explodes through the line and, picks up what's blocked +5 type of guy pretty regularly. So, maybe that, but he now needs, because the other thing is he's missed that period where he had a chance to impress guys in shorts. He doesn't, and he's had, he had an injury in the pre-draft period, which is one of the reasons that he fell. If he had a chance to work out and impress guys, press scouts, maybe he's a day 2 pick, just given how productive he was as a rusher. But he's kind of behind the 8 ball here. I will say that, you could read the quotes that the Vikings are giving about Chandler either way. They've been asked about him and, if he's going to have a bigger role, and they're basically like, he's going to have to. So you can say like, see, they're planning on using him, or they're like, fuck.
Well, it's like I read it the same way Israel Abanikanda is getting talked about, which is like, yeah, he's gonna have to play because we literally hate Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight. Like these,
right.
Like they are so bad that we're just gonna have to use this 5th round rookie while we're waiting for Brees to get back. Like I don't think it's that they're super enamored with Abanikanda. It's just that they hate the other guys they have on their roster.
Right. Mm-hmm. So McBride has maybe an opening that if he impresses, but what do you put the odds on that? Like how likely is it that
I'm pretty into it. I think that like the Jerome Ford free square, you used to be able to take him in the 18th round. I mean, it's completely gone. So like I view, like look at some of these other running backs who were going late, like guys who are unsigned, guys who are real cut threats. Zach Evans, might not even make the team. Joshua Kelly, Deuce Vaughn. Look, we love Deuce Vaughn here on this program, but he's probably on the outside looking in for a roster spot with Dallas. Like
Chandler, I kind of think it's between Malik Davis and Ronald Jones, and then Vaughn will do his Vaughn. Like if they sign Zeke, this all changes. But
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Nepotism
I
as
think
well. We have
the other thing
nepotism,
to call out about all these situations, right, is that we still have like what 3 to 4 veteran running backs that I think are gonna work their way into running back 2 roles on some team, right? Fournette,
Oh yeah.
Dalvin Cook, Zeke, Kareem Hunt.
Hunt.
Maybe Zeke and Kareem Hunt you could say are maybe looking more at RB3 roles on teams, but
I
I don't
put
know.
Zeke
Like,
in the RB2 tier. I think just
Yeah.
on name brand alone, someone's going to assume he'll be their RB2.
exactly. So, like, that's the thing with Minnesota. They cut Dalvin Cook and saved 10 million. I think they could justify. Fournette, I don't think is like looking for money, right? He's talked about like going to a team that has a chance to win. The Vikings made the playoffs last year, right? Maybe he strikes out on the Chiefs and other places where he really wants to go and takes 2 million from the Vikings, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not ruling out a veteran running back landing.
Dude, if Leonard Fournette signs with the Vikings, he is going to get. I'm going to draft the shit out of him.
I've been drafting the shit out of him. He's one of my highest owned guys. Like, he's free. You can get him in the 18th round sometime.
I do like Fournette much more than Hunt and Zeke.
Same.
At
Me
this
too.
point. Yeah.
Because he's as cheap as Hunt, but I think he's got more left in terms of like Fournette's never really had that much, but he's
right.
But he still has that, right? Like, he's still big. He can rumble. He can get going like okay. And then he's hard to bring down once he's getting going because he's fucking huge.
And teams trust him in pass blocking and pass catching, and also trust him at the goal line, right? So like he's a guy where if the running back 1 goes down, he can find himself in a really high value touch role, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's another reason I like him. Yeah. Goal line work and dump offs is like his whole game.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of the biggest compilers. All right, let's move on from the Viking situation. Let's talk about the Cardinals again this week. We have both Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown continuing to move up on the D-Hop news. Rondale is a guy that I personally have come around on more. I want to pull out this stat this is from Hayden Winks on Twitter, that Rondale Moore played 77% of 2 wide receiver sets.
Actually, it's actually more than that because he got hurt in one of those games. It's even higher. He had multiple games of 100% snap share.
And so it's like in my head I was like Rondale Moore 5'6", he doesn't play in 2 wide receiver sets. That's actually not true last year. Now it's worth noting obviously that in those games either Marquise or DeAndre Hopkins was out. So if both those guys had been healthy, certainly he was not going to play in 2 wide receiver sets in those games. But just how the cards fell last year, that's what happened.
Now Hopkins is gone.
Exactly. So I guess the question, I'll give this to you, Pat. Like, do you think that Rondale Moore playing in 2 wide receiver sets is like their plan this year, or was that just sort of a desperation play last year when they didn't have better alternatives?
Well, I also think, what is this offense going to look like in terms of base personnel? Because, one thing you can say for Cliff, I don't want to say too much for him, but they used a lot of 3 wide receiver sets.
Mm-hmm.
They used a ton of 3 wide receiver sets. So Rondale Moore wasn't like always out there, on the outside, even if he's playing, or running 100% of routes.
Yes.
He could still be in the slot for a lot of those snaps. Are they going to use quite as much of that base 3 wide receiver set under this, new coaching staff? I would guess they use that a fair amount, but that's certainly like a reason to maybe worry a little bit, especially if down the stretch, they get anything out of Michael Wilson, who's their 3rd round pick. I don't think he's all that much of a threat, but he is kind of he's sort of an Alec Pierce type. Like, if you just want a guy on the outside who's going to run straight down the field and draw the defense, you would put Alec Pierce, you would put Alec Pierce or Michael Wilson out there as opposed to Rondale Moore. And so, if you just think about like, who is Rondale Moore really? He strikes me as like the type of guy who might run between 80 and 85% route rate as a really good slot receiver. Like, if he's really good,
I've got your Rondale comp. He's Jacoby Myers in this offense, right?
That seems like almost overly optimistic to me.
You're drafting him as he's gone up 50 spots in ADP. You're probably feeling optimistic, right?
Well, sure, but Yeah, I think he's more like he's like a Tyler Boyd with more explosiveness.
Yeah, I mean that would be the thing. Would be that this sort of real run after the catch, insane ability that we've always thought he had actually shows himself. In 2021, in week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings, I'll always remember it because I just was so enthusiastic about Rondale Moore as a rookie. He scored a 65-yard touchdown against the Minnesota Vikings, like whipping and weaving in around the defense the whole way. 8 targets, 7 receptions, 114 yards, and 1 touchdown. And that is the last time Rondale Moore ever had a 100-yard game. I'm seeming a little facetious, but I do actually think Greg Dortch is still the guy I'm taking here. He's free.
Why? What's the thesis of the play with Dortch? I don't really get it.
Dortch is the thesis of like, it's really the same as sort of like the 2-2 thesis or the
high point, a lot of high pointed catches.
No, like the it's like the Paris Campbell. It's just like he gets in there because he just runs really reliable routes. He never drops the ball. He's gonna be Greg Dortch. He's gonna do what he did when he played last year. I don't think he's got any ceiling. Like, I think Greg Dortch has 0 1,000-yard seasons in his range of outcomes. Doesn't have any double-digit touchdown seasons in his range of outcomes. But the Dortch thing plays on, it's a total train wreck season for Arizona. They're playing Clayton Tune in week 17. Kyler never comes back. It's just they go 0-17 and Hollywood chips a nail and they're like, all right, bud, let's put you on IR. It's that thesis.
But wasn't he mostly filling in for Rondale Moore? Isn't that how he?
I believe he filled in for both Rondale and Hollywood when they got banged up last year. I believe that is the case. You have to tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. So in week 7, he ran 16 routes and then 18 routes in week 8, and Rondale had 30 routes and 52 routes.
He also filled in a little bit for Hopkins. I mean, he played 91% of the snaps in week 1, right before anyone was injured.
Well, Rondale didn't play week 1. Rondale only played weeks 4 through 11. So Dortch was relevant in the first 3 weeks, and then his routes took a big hit.
What was his?
He was filling in for Rondale mostly.
What was his targets per route run last year? I'd be curious to know that.
He had 64 targets on.
It's got to be kind of decent, I would think, just because he runs those really easy routes.
18 and a half. Not great.
It's fine. That's the thing with to talk about Rondale again. Like I know the targets for route run stuff like loves Rondale, but I don't think people account for how much of those are schemed. Like
loves him the same way yards per. It loves Kadarius Toney. It's the same thing.
He was running a lot. Like, I'll give him a little bit more credit than Toney because at least he was running all the routes. But I mean, you look at his stat lines last year, and he had a lot of high target games, but his ADOT's going to be really low. I don't know. And then you look at some of the wide receiver charting stuff. Over the last 2 years, Rondale Moore, in terms of open score, is like 95th out of 128 qualifying wide receivers. So again, that's not like the end all be all stat, but I'm pretty skeptical he's a guy that's going to go out and beat man coverage down the field. Like, I just don't. At this point, I think we would have seen a little bit more of that by now. That said, like, bring it all around, wide receiver 136 for a guy that I think projects to play in 2 wide receiver sets is not a terrible price. Like,
not wide receiver 36.
Sorry. ADP of 136 is what I meant. Sorry, wide receiver 62. But yeah, he's I'm probably taking him ahead of like Romeo Doubs is there. I'm fine taking him ahead of Doubs. I'll take him ahead of Thielen. Yeah. I'd take him ahead of probably Darnell Mooney.
I would take you ahead of Thielen. I can't imagine drafting Thielen. Unless Thielen was literally
better short area quickness than Thielen at this point.
I think you do too. I've seen you play pickleball, and
I literally can't imagine. There are two guys who go Smith-Schuster and Thielen. I just don't know who's clicking.
Yeah, who's taking them?
Like, why is Devontae Parker got like a 0% draft rate, but Juju Smith-Schuster is wide receiver 50?
Guys, Juju is not that. It's not that bad. I don't take a lot of him.
It's not that bad.
But it's not that bad. We've talked about let's not get sidetracked in Juju too much. But we talked about how one of the biggest edges this year is just the fact that New England did not have an offensive coordinator last year. This year they do. He's being drafted at wide receiver.
I don't think that's a reason to draft a guy who couldn't do shit with Patrick Mahomes.
That's exactly.
He put up couldn't do shit. He drew 100 targets and had 900 receiving yards. Like it's a little
if Juju
overblown.
had stayed on the Chiefs, I don't know that I would like him at this price.
No, I would. I'd be taking him.
I'd
be taking him.
Fine. Yeah, I would. I would stomach it because wide receiver gets so gross. But
he got hurt. He got hurt.
He was not good. He was not good with Patrick Mahomes.
I think the more bearish Juju thing is that these are his postseason numbers. 2 targets, 2 receptions against Jacksonville. 1 target, 1 reception against the Cincinnati Bengals. 9 targets, 7 receptions, 53 yards in the Super Bowl. That's super bearish.
Good Super Bowl. I heard a good Super Bowl performance right there.
That's the upside for you. Man.
He did.
He got hurt.
To him, he drew the game winning foul against what's his name?
There you go.
Yeah, but
how
he's
many
like
points are
now.
Like
he's going for the fouls. He knows he can't get open, so it's just like hold me.
I don't think any of these other risers. I don't think any of these other risers are interesting.
Well, let's touch on Thornton because I think, like to your point about the Patriots,
this is all slappy driven. It's all slappy driven. This is baked in.
This is literally just like Pete's streams making up a bigger percentage of the overall.
Yes,
draft.
this is pure slappy. That's all.
But I just want to mention Thornton because legendary upset we had to bump Devontae Parker up the ranks just because we're like, I guess he's a human being who plays football. We should have him.
When you say we had to bump up the ranks, who's we?
Well, the royal we. But so it's like
I love using the royal we talking about a solo project. I do that all the time talking about the Takecast. I'm like, yeah, we really appreciate it, right? Totally.
I do have a little bit of help with the ranks behind the scenes. But the Patriots thing, I mean, if you just say Juju stinks, I don't feel like drafting the most expensive guy on the Patriots who also is a pure slot receiver. I can get their 2 starting outside wide receivers and their starting tight end for free later. Why wouldn't you do that? It seems like a better way to play it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a better way to. Okay, I'm not saying I'm overweight Juju. I'm gonna be underweight Juju, but I don't think he's like. I think the hate on Juju is a little overblown. I think he could basically do what he's gonna be in the same role as Jacoby Myers last year. Jacoby Myers also a guy not awesome at beating man, kind of a slot wide receiver. I think Myers is better than Juju, but I think that could be outweighed by the fact that the Patriots offense as a whole is going to be way more competent than it was last year. So like just put him in the Myers role. The offense gets a little bit better. He does like a little bit worse in terms of like share than Myers did. And at wide receiver 50, like I don't think it's like awful, but I'm not taking it.
One thing I will say for Myers, I don't know if he gets like full credit for the fact that like last year he played 30% of his snaps out wide. He was at 33%. That was a career low as well. He was at 34% the year before, 35% career percentage at out wide. And Juju's been like, I mean, as time has gone on, he's just become more and more of like a pure slot guy. Yeah. So I don't know. He actually did play a lot of his snaps out wide with the Chiefs, but he sucked. So he might be back to the Steelers usage.
Like if this is kind of a nuanced point, but like if Jacoby was on the Patriots, I would be more excited about him than I am Juju. But the fact that Juju, like, okay, you can say that these other Patriots wide receivers are discounted or whatever, but like, man, look at Tyquan Thornton's like targets per route run, yards per route run last year. Like bad. It was garbage. Like look at anybody else. It was garbage. Like I think Juju does have a meaningful chance of just like scooping up all the volume in this offense in a way that Jacoby Myers on the Raiders with Devontae Adams does not, right? So that's where I'm kind of at.
Patriots do seem underpriced because one way this could play out is that Ramondre just gets a ton of dump.
That's the best way to play it.
He could be like an Eckler type of dude.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, not enough Juju talk. The other trend I wanted to call out here is Mixon is rising, and he hasn't had any like. I don't think he's been featured on this chart heavily, but he's just steadily going higher and higher.
this also felt inevitable to me.
Yeah.
Like, because it's sort of like a Lindy effect thing where every single day that he's not cut or jailed or traded, it's just more likely he's going to be the Bengals running back one, right?
So what even is I actually like did 20 minutes of Googling on Mixon trying to find like any recent news or whatever. Like, have you guys heard any like updates? Because there's like nothing. Like, I'm kind of pricing in like a very low suspension risk at this point, and I don't know if that's smart or not. But like at this point, I'm kind of treating it like, I don't know, 10% chance of being suspended or cut. I don't know. It's pretty uncertain, but there's not a lot of recent buzz about this blowing up for him. I don't know.
Could be like
it does seem like a
Kamara
low
thing.
cut risk.
Yeah.
I think almost no cut risk. I mean, the Bengals are trying to win a Super Bowl. They're going into the season with Chris Evans, Travion Williams, and who's the other guy that people like? Chase Brown.
Chase Brown.
Yeah. No, the Bengals are trying to win a Super Bowl. They're not cutting Mixon right now.
I think that the concern is that he gets suspended. And I don't know, that's been hard for me to price the odds of that because nothing has really changed in a positive way since this incident surfaced. Like I thought like I drafted a ton of him in the late stage of the big board, which I feel good about now because he's moved up significantly in price since then. But I felt kind of sick to my stomach for a minute after I realized that what I thought then was that this charge had gone away because they like misfiled it and it was pulled, but the charge has not gone away. They refiled it. It was some sort of clerical, whatever. The police officer did not follow the procedure correctly or something. So they like pulled it and then refiled it. Now it's been very quiet since then, but he does still face this charge and that could lead to a suspension. And I don't know, it's sort of like in the absence of not really hearing about it, we're just like,
and by the way,
that seems wrong, right? Like we shouldn't get more. We should be exactly the same confident we were a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So an interesting thing as it pertains to that. This is my, if I can be Brian Windhorse here, if I can point for a second. Teams and the league, when it comes to running backs, they throw the hammer down on the suspension because it doesn't matter, right? Like they're like Kareem Hunt. There's a video of you shoving a woman in a hallway. Cut in the middle of 1,000-yard, 15 touchdown season. Alvin Kamara, like I mean, Kamara might end up suspended for the year, you know, and who knows how that goes. That is my Windhorse pointing meme is that when it is a running back who is in trouble, when it is a running back who has this legal thing, I feel like the book can be thrown. Whereas if this was Jamar Chase dealing with this, I mean, the Bengals would be Johnny Cochran would be his lawyer, right? I mean, there would be a full on like legal assault to keep Jamar Chase from missing a down of football. So that is my, and obviously I'm not saying that this is morally justifiable. It's fucking gross, but that's definitely something to keep in mind.
I completely agree. And by the way, I'm not touching Kamara right now.
0% for me.
Yeah, he could be for the whole season for sure. I think that's in play. I mean, I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but I would say 6 games is the most likely outcome. I would put anything lower than that is very unlikely. And then all your uncertainty risk is sort of
and Kamara might be cooked anyway. Kamara might be dust anyway. Like Taysom Hill.
He's spent his last 2 seasons being like a workhorse rusher, and it seems to have not worked out particularly well for his legs.
No. Although that feels more like a tactical error than anything that would have been his fault.
Well, it's a double tactical error because, like, 1, it wasn't all that effective because that's not really what he does, and 2, I think it may have burned him out.
Also, these are Kamara's snaps down the stretch, these percentages aren't bad for like a normal running back, but in the context of what Kamara's competition was last year, they're pretty bad. Week 13, 59% of snaps. Week 15, 62% of snaps. Week 16, 70%. Then week 17, back down to 58%. He was losing those snaps to David Johnson and Mark Ingram. Like, I don't know. I think I'm.
Well, he got hurt, right? Am I misremembering that? Didn't he get hurt?
I don't know what the deal was with Kamara.
He missed a couple games. Like he got injured in the middle of this season.
I'm not seeing he missed week 2 and week 4, but then anyways, like you look at his snap shares like in the middle of the year, then towards the end, it did seem like the Saints were like reducing his workload, which was weird because
he was probably beat. He probably was just like exhausted. Like, I mean, like Tony Pollard is ripping off like 37-yard gains and then tapping out for Malik Davis because the Cowboys running back coach wanted him to do that. Like, they just, I don't know.
I guess my point is like even if you win on Kamara and he doesn't get suspended, you're probably just getting a committee back on the Saints who's 29 years old now and has been worn down the past couple of years.
Who plays the Buccaneers in week 17 though?
Who has Taysom Hill stealing all of his touchdowns at the goal line?
I mean, all I know is I just got a vision of Justin Herzig being the only one in the final with Alvin Kamara again.
That would be so funny.
I don't know, man.
I'm not taking him, but if I know he got a 3-game suspension, I'm gonna be like, I'm so stupid. I just spent an offseason taking AJ Dillon and Antonio Gibson and Alvin. I could have had 30% Alvin Kamara for 13 games. Like, I'm a moron.
Yeah, I kind of get it, but I don't know. It's been 2 years of Kamara, like, kind of being bad.
Yeah. And I just think the odds of him getting a 3-game suspension are very low. Like, he punched a dude.
Yeah.
We have a video of it. We have a video after where he talks about making a good connection. That doesn't, I mean, like, I don't think legally that makes all that much of a difference, but like Goodell's going to have seen that. Like, it's not good.
Yeah. Back to Mixon quickly. What's like, okay, say we get, I think like pricing in his odds of suspension is like incredibly ambiguous and tough to do. Maybe a little bit easier is like figuring out what the win is if we get the news that he's not going to be suspended. Like, what is his ADP if we get the news tomorrow that, you know, these charges were made up, blah, blah, blah.
Madison range? No, higher. I thought you just said Kamara.
Talking Mixon?
Mixon.
Oh, fuck. Mixon. Did I say Kamara? I meant Mixon.
That was me. Okay. That was my fault. Mixon goes back to where he was being drafted last year. 2-3 turn.
I don't think he'd be that high.
I would say 3-4 turn, like ahead of Najee, but behind Brees.
Yeah. I think the decision is him or ETN.
Yeah.
Those are like, that's a similar thing where you're like, I'm not sure I want to bet on the offense. I'm not sure that he's going to have every touch. He certainly could get every touch if they committed to him, but I'm not sure if they're going to commit to him, right? It's like a very similar decision with ETN. I think if I knew that he didn't have any suspension risk, I think I would be taking him over ETN. I would not be taking him over Brees, Ramondre, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry. Like, that would be very difficult for me to do, I think. So it's a weird thing because you could talk me into like maybe taking him over Jacobs who hasn't signed yet or Henry who's 29, but those guys go earlier. Brees and Ramondre are the two. Where
Big Henry is getting the message out. You know, we're letting the people know that he plays the Houston Texans in week 15 and week 17.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it is like a win with Mixon, but it's not like this massive. It's no longer this massive ADP win, right? Like you're getting maybe a round and a half discount, which is certainly big, like round 3 to round 5. Like I'm not saying that's nothing, but it's not like when I was getting him at like 70 or 80, it was like, whoa, I'm getting this steal of a pick. Now I'm kind of like, this is probably about right, given the ambiguous risk.
Yeah, and what I do like about I took him on a team the other day. And I'm going to be underweight Mixon almost certainly, but, I've mixed him in and I had that period where I was hammering him at least, but you still can build around him like he's a kind of a hero running back type of guy. Like in a way where I don't really feel comfortable doing that with like Aaron Jones or, Mattison or Miles Sanders or whatever, like, or Dobbins, any of those guys. I don't want to build like, this is my week in, week out starter at running back. But I think with Mixon, because there is still that suspension risk, you can do that, Mm-hmm. I'd probably build around him pretty similarly to like a Ramondre or a Jacobs or a Brees, even though I like those guys better. Brees is maybe not a good example since he might not start the season. But yeah, like a Ramondre or Jacobs, like I probably build a similar team and you get a a decent discount to make
Yeah.
that build. Like the 2v2 you're getting on one of those guys is pretty
You're
nice.
getting like Amari Cooper instead of Chris Godwin or something like in that 2x2. So yeah, it's a decent
it still presents an opportunity.
upgrade. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It does. Okay, let's move on to the fallers here. So now we're looking at the largest fallers from the past week, June 5th to June 12th. A lot of repeat fallers on this list. And the first most obvious thing that's going to stand out to everyone, we have four of the top 5 quarterbacks are on this list. Justin Fields is down. Jalen Hurts is down. Patrick Mahomes is down. Josh Allen is down. So I think the question is now, like, maybe let's focus on like Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts and put Fields aside. Like, are these guys like undraftable in the second round now because you see more and more people getting them in the third round? Or
I push it every time, and if it means that I don't get them, like, that's fine. What ends up happening is I have a lot of weird teams where it's like, okay, I take Kelsey, I take Devonta Smith or whoever, just the second round pick doesn't matter. Then the quarterback I need, Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, they go. And then I take Lamar a lot of the time. So I have these weird teams where it's like elite first round, elite wide receiver, elite tight end, elite running back. Then, naked Lamar, backdoor it with Bateman or whomever. Which is like, I mean, obviously I would like it better to have it with the quarterback that I prefer. But I also sort of like that idea of like, that's a weird combo. Most people are probably not doing Kelsey, Saquon Barkley. You miss on Mahomes. You try and press it. You miss on Mahomes, but instead you just take Lamar. Like that gives you like a weird sort of leverage in, like, what if Kelsey has 21 points, which is probably far and away the most points that someone scores in week 17 at tight end, but Mahomes just has like 24. Just a 303, like a normal good game.
Mm-hmm.
There are probably lots of paths to non-Mahomes teams winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the fall does feel like something where the rest of the quarterback prices really do matter to try to figure out how to attack it. Where like on DraftKings, I'm still a little bit more willing to take the second round quarterback because I feel, like I'm going to get, you're still getting that third round running back that it also feels like an unusual price. I really like Mark Andrews in the third round. So like, I kind of still, even if I take a second round quarterback on DraftKings, I still end up liking my first 3 picks and feeling like these are, 3 guys that are going to be like, no one else is going to have these 3 guys plus like a really good second rounder, and quarterback on DraftKings is trickier. Sometimes there's more auto drafters. You'll see.
I take quarterbacks at ADP or ahead of ADP on DraftKings because I hate the idea of drafting 150 teams there, but going into the season with like, sick dude, you have a bunch of Daniel Jones and Derek Carr back stacks. Like, it's just, I just hate that idea. So you got to, but it makes up for it. You get made up for that on DraftKings by a bunch of the skill position players.
Exactly.
And you can get JSN later. You can get Johnson. Like, all these guys are so much cheaper there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you pay your little premium on DraftKings to like make sure that you have an overall portfolio of teams you're going to like. So you pay that premium a little bit at quarterback, and then you get to bask in the glory of all of this value that sweeps over you at wide receiver and running back and stuff. So that's, if I'm going to still draft the second round quarterbacks right now, it's really primarily on DraftKings. I think the fact that Fields is falling, like, I sometimes see, I wrote an article where I was saying it's really nice right now how you can do the DJ Moore at the end of the 4th and then try to get Fields to come back in the 5th, and then if you don't get that, maybe you can get Christian Kirk in the early 5th and do the same thing again with Trevor Lawrence in the 6th round. But I've seen, like, I took DJ Moore in the 5th round on Underdog and Fields was also there. Like, so like people just passed on that whole thing entirely. With Fields falling into the 5th sometimes, it does make, it's like, dude, if I can get 5th round Fields, like, am I taking second round Josh Allen or second round Jalen Hurts? It's just way less appealing. And Anthony Richardson is also falling. I see him in the 9th round a decent amount now. It's like, I don't know. I want to get the upside of quarterback, but pay as little as possible. And you're getting the upside cheaper across the board. So if it was just this pocket falling, I might be like inclined to hammer them at the cheapest prices we've gotten so far. But because everybody seems to be falling, I'm kind of pushing it further and seeing if I can get like mid third, which I usually don't, but I'm trying.
So I've been getting the past couple of days, I've been getting a lot of like pick 30 Josh Allen, pick 30 Jalen Hurts, even on teams where I don't have the pass catchers on those teams. I'm totally fine grabbing the naked Allen and Hurts there because it's this like micro take for me where I thought that in the late second, it's really tough to click Hurts or Allen over Brees, over Ramondre, over Derrick Henry. If you like the wide receivers, you can throw them in there as well. But then once those guys are gone and you're staring at pick 30 of like naked Jalen Hurts versus Calvin Ridley, like that's a hammer Hurts for me. And I'm even like, maybe I'm different from most people here, but I'm even fine if I don't get Goddard. Like I'll certainly reach like a half round to get Goddard and would like to get him there if I have a naked Hurts. But like, man, I think naked Hurts at pick
the
30
move
totally
with
pay
naked
off.
Hurts is to giga stack another game. You know, Broncos, Chargers,
Yep.
Colts, Raiders, whatever. And then you have Jalen Hurts score 3 rushing touchdowns in week 17. And A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Goddard, none of those dudes get fed at all. And you have the 34 ball from Jalen Hurts. But the Jalen Hurts stacks that get there to the final are carrying, you know, first round A.J. Brown 11 points or whatever. That's the move if you get the Hurts past ADP team, I think.
Seattle's nice because you can go get Lockett. And, well, you can't really get Lockett and JSN all that reliably, but you can pull it off.
30% of the time, you can do it.
Yeah. And the Josh Allen naked is even better because there's so many, like the wide receiver 3 there, the market's kind of throwing up their hands and saying, we don't know if it's going to be Hardy or Shakir. You know, Kincaid, I don't love his price, but in a stack, it's like a pretty cheap piece to get. I'm fine with Kincaid if you have it stacked with Allen. Like you can find guys pretty cheap in Buffalo now, which I think shows up. Like we've showed this chart a bunch, but this like mega stack chart for Buffalo, like they're not even in the top 10, or maybe like they're right at 10 in terms of most expensive offenses. Like the market is not really pricing up these Buffalo secondary.
They're trying to. The Kincaid slappies are really trying to.
They're trying to, but it's still pretty cheap.
But Shakir's falling. I see Shakir just sitting there past ADP a lot of times.
You can get Shakir and Hardy round 18 pretty reliably.
That's what I've been doing. And I've been doing both Shakir and Hardy 17, 18 when I have Allen. I say, fuck it. Like one of these guys is going to probably be a bust, but like maybe even not. Like Allen or Gabe Davis or Diggs gets hurt and suddenly both those guys are relevant, right? So
on DraftKings, I've done that without Allen. I've taken Shakir and Hardy because I'm like, last year we had, you know, Jamison Crowder's the guy, you know, he's going like what in the 12th or 13th round. And then McKenzie was free and then it flipped. And then McKenzie was like in the 12th round and Crowder was free. But like this year, both guys are free. Those are the wide receiver 3 and 4 on the Bills, right? Like I'm not missing anybody. Yeah. So I guess the guy I'm missing, right, is Dalton Kincaid, but I get to bet against a rookie tight end with 2 wide receivers. One of whom is really fast.
When are the slappies gonna tap out on Kincaid?
I don't know that they are.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I was the slappy last year with Albert O, right? I wasn't letting it go. And then eventually I did. I stopped taking him. I think the lowest he got was like tight end 15. But then there was the false flag where Albert O ended up getting more expensive right at the end again. After they said Dulcich was going to be on the IR, he ended up getting like the last like 2 weeks. He ended up getting expensive again. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's the Kincaid stuff. So I don't love his price in a vacuum. The reason like I'm maybe not as down on him as you guys, and I would take him like an Allen stacks pretty happily, is that like the Bills over the past couple years have just thrown so many times and ran so many plays that I think a 55-60% route participation tight end on the Bills is equivalent to like a 90% participation tight end on the Panthers, right? Like it's not like once you do the math there, like it's probably not as bad as it looks. And like I think there is upside just because I am not a Gabe Davis talent believer. Like put me on the record for that. And like besides Diggs, like I kind of see the upside, but yeah, I'm not taking him unstacked. Like I'm easily just taking a running back there.
I take Kincaid with Josh Allen. I'm man enough to admit it. If I have a Josh Allen team, I'll take him.
I don't really take him. I'm sure I have it, but I don't look to do it really. I'm just like, to me, Knox is the starting tight end there. You can get him really late. And
I would just love the winning $1 million with Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid, and then the haters just pull a bunch of clips of me saying Dalton Kincaid is the worst ADP in fantasy football history.
That would be pretty great.
Then you just send the screenshot of the $1 million. Yeah. I've been hearing this too, like Buffalo, Hunter Renfrow, DeAndre Hopkins. They just signed, and this is where my lack of defensive knowledge hurts me, but they just signed someone to a big deal on defense that I'm blanking on now.
Did.
Like their cap space is like they certainly
extended out at Oliver.
At Oliver, right? So they can restructure, and I'm sure they can fit in like a Renfrow or Hopkins. But those guys, like Renfrow's contract's expensive. Hopkins is asking for a lot of money. Like it's no longer trivial for them to add those guys. So I do get you can lose on the Hardy and Shakir bets by them making a trade for a veteran, sure, but I would not say that's the most likely outcome at this point.
I do take some Renfrow because there's lots of rumors that he's going to get traded. This is like a hilarious. This is like, I don't know if this is information or not, probably not, but the Raiders Pro Shop was offering a discount on Hunter Renfrow jerseys. This is like the Dalvin Cook remove from
there was a report last week from The Athletic that there's been no chatter. There's been no movement on a Renfrow trade.
There's been no movement, but I don't think the Raiders seem open to it. There hasn't been any movement on a trade.
I mean, it does seem like a really bad schematic fit having Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, and Michael Mayer all running routes together.
And Devonta Adams, who historically has run a ton of routes out of the slot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all just going to it's just,
they build the whole offense out of the trips bunch, right? So it's just Adams is in the front, Myers is right there, Renfrow's right there. They're all standing in a little triangle on the right side. Michael Mayer on the other side, Jacobs in the backfield. That's every play. Beautiful.
The entire last 10 years of football has been taking advantage of horizontal space on the field, and Josh McDaniels is just going to have everyone lined up right next to each other, like a giant jumbo set.
Josh McDaniels, yeah, man. Josh McDaniels, that hire's looking really good right now. Other guys,
there was no evidence of that this could happen, that he would just come in and tank a franchise.
No, that never happened before. No. And also, I mean, you look at the Belichick coaching tree, and all those guys have been huge successes. So you can't really blame them for trying it.
Pretty good architect over there.
Other guys I wanted to call. I do think what's interesting here. Moving on from the quarterbacks is both Bijan and Taylor falling. And now this isn't huge, like raw ADP falls. They obviously show up in this chart because when you're going at pick 10, a one spot drop in ADP is huge on a percentage basis. But that's
I don't get this. Why is he falling?
I think it's just wide. So you go back to the risers chart, you see Devonta Smith and Garrett Wilson both showing up here. And if this chart extended further, AJ Brown, some of these other wide receivers are going up slightly too. So I think it's just like the continued wide receiver thirst is continuing to punish
my theory is it's Eckler. I think there's only so many guys in the first round in a given draft who want to take a running back.
Yeah.
And now they're taking Eckler. And so then you get just odds are based on who's drafting right now. It's like, I don't want to start my draft with a
and that actually I think that actually kind of makes sense. Like Eckler probably scores more fantasy points than Bijan. So seems fine.
Maybe. Yeah.
I'll also say though, McCaffrey is down. He would be 14th on this chart. Breece Hall is down a spot. Tony Pollard is down a spot. I don't think it's entirely explained by Eckler. I don't see Eckler on my list here. He might be up slightly, but I would say
he's up from 3 weeks ago, right? He's kind of regained his 108 type of.
Eckler's only up 0.2 spots this week, and a ton of these early running backs are down a full spot. So
the puppy is another reason for this, then, right? Because the puppy, when I'm in the puppy, I do think twice about taking McCaffrey. Whereas in Best Ball Mania, I take him. I don't really
Why do you think twice about taking him in the puppy?
because I know all these sickos are going to take all the receivers. I'm looking at like sometimes in the second round, I'm like I've started in the puppy McCaffrey, Pollard, Brees a fair amount like that. That type of, which, hey, I think that's a pretty good start. But like, God, immediately the rest of my draft is just like, all right, I'm just chasing receiver. I reach for guys that I like because I'm like, I'm like less willing to trust the market when I'm like desperate for receiver points.
Do you know why this is not even a big deal, dude? Because then on those teams, you just take an elite quarterback, you take an Allen, you take Mahomes, you take one of these guys you can.
How do I get Allen or Mahomes? I've taken 3 running backs to start.
Oh, I just mean when you take CMC.
Oh, okay.
And then you can fill out your wide receiver numbers with guys who correlate, right? You get Mahomes, and you take Boyd, Sky, and Rice. So you get 3 correlated pieces, and I think also another thing is to consciously make those 8 wide receiver teams. Maybe do 2 quarterback, 2 tight end on them.
I really like that, David. That strategic bet of like I am like generally doing the 4 wide receivers through 7 or 8 rule, but the rare times where like. Say maybe I do 4 wide receivers through 8, but it's all like rounds 5 through 8 or rounds 4 through 7 or whatever. In those builds, I'm very consciously going, okay, I'm now going to bet on one team where their pass catchers are all going late, and I'm just going to grab all those guys. So I'm going to bet on the Panthers, and I'm going to go DJ Chark, Mingo, stack it up with Bryce Young, and then I say, okay, if the Panthers are just like the 19th best offense in the NFL this year, then these wide receivers are going to save me. So I do really like
Patriots, Texans,
Giants.
Yeah, lots of ways you can do it.
Rams.
And obviously you would not want to draft 150 teams that way, but I do not want to go into the season being like, hell yeah, dude, I got 2 Christian McCaffrey teams in Best Ball Mania, because I was too afraid of getting buried by the Avalanche.
Yeah.
No. Well, and I'm less afraid of the Avalanche in Best Ball Mania right now because a lot of the Avalanche drafters are over in the puppy. And I think that'll be even more true as the puppy gets closer to filling. You want to get your puppies in.
What are your guys' thoughts on this? I just take who's ever at the top of the queue in round 1. I basically
do that too.
I don't do. Now, last year it was the exact opposite where I took huge stands in round 1. I took McCaffrey every time he was available when I was there. And I took Kelsey a ton too. I took Kelsey ahead of ADP a lot. This year, I think round 1. I think the round 1 ADP is just right. Like I think it's just I think it's pretty correct.
Yeah,
I have some very micro stands that like I don't even know if it's worth talking. Like I'm taking AJ Brown over Diggs.
Oh, I do that too.
That's just like age model. Like I think there's hidden upside.
That's vibes based. That's vibes based analysis, and I'm on board with it.
Yeah. I also
think it's totally vibes based. I mean, AJ Brown is an absolute superstar. He's younger, and he showed an ultra elite ceiling last year. Like if you get one of those giant, AJ Brown versus the Steelers, AJ Brown versus the Titans types of games, and they don't pull their starters either.
Corinne, do you care at all that AJ Brown's Week 17 game may be the least competitive? Like it might have a 14.5 point spread. Like, are you?
What if Kyler's back though? I don't know. Could
I'm not saying it's a reason not to take him, but in the game of like, aren't you worried that we play?
Sure.
Aren't you worried about Darius Slay? Aren't you worried about whatever? Like, it's something I've thought about of being like that could actually be the least competitive Week 17 game by like a lot.
Yeah, I mean that is not ideal that they could just be resting everybody. They could have shut down Kyler. But we saw, I mean, the Eagles were steamrolling teams last year and they were putting up a ton of points on the way to do it.
100%. It's not the kind of thing that you can be like, I'm going to take a stand on what I expect the Week 17 Arizona Cardinals to look like.
Right. And also like, if they demolish the Cardinals, like there will be points in that demolition
in the first half. Sure. Someone on the Eagles is going off in the first half. Someone on the Eagles is having a great game. Right.
Because the Cardinals defense stinks too. Like it's not, if they're resting starters on defense, like holy crap, it could be, I could only need like, one half for my Eagles, but plus it's hard to like fully kind of jumbo stack the Eagles as well. Mega stack them, you can, but it's difficult. So you generally are betting on like 1 or 2 guys. Plus
another thing on sorry to interrupt there, but another thing on Jalen, like the Eagles, that's super exciting. Jalen Hurts literally had more than double his total passing yards. Sorry, he more than doubled up his second half passing yards in the first half of games last year. In the first half of games, he had 2,500 passing yards. In the second half of games, he had just 1,200. So, like, if the Eagles aren't as dominant, obviously, like, there's a little, if they're not as dominant in the first half, those first half stats won't look as good. But, like, they were just completely blowing teams out of the building and not even having to try in the second half of games last year. If their defense is a little bit worse, their schedule is a little bit harder, like some things break in a different way. I think the passing numbers for the Eagles could really skyrocket in a way that the market's not fully baking in. So
they were not afraid to pass. They were not afraid to attack deep. Like, this is a team that I think can be quite aggressive through the air, even though, like, if you look at their overall rush versus pass stuff, because they weren't afraid to run it down people's throats either. But they had multiple approaches. It's like, and what I loved about the Eagles is they were like predictable. If they went into a matchup where there was no pass rush, bad secondary, like, it was pretty easy bet that they were just going to chuck it deep, and that works super well. I mean, AJ Brown was unstoppable deep last year, so I think they'll probably run it down people's throats a fair amount because they're going to be good. But I agree, if they need to get in a few more shootouts, like, they're not going to shy away from that. This is not the Bears or the Falcons. Like, they don't need to, like, rush it a certain amount of times, feel good about their game plan or whatever. Like, they'll go toe to toe with people.
Yeah. And again, just to phrase it slightly differently, like, Jalen Hurts would have surpassed 5,000 yards in 15 games played if you just take his first half stats and apply it to the second half. Now, obviously, you can't quite do that. Like, but that's like the ceiling as a passer we're talking about. If the Eagles were forced to pass a little bit more, and if it was as successful as last year. So that's why I think AJ Brown and even you could argue Devonta Smith too, I think, have a lot of hidden upside.
Oh yeah. I think Smith has a lot of upside as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
One guy, so FF Doom said an Eagle in every draft. I've got a guy in my Discord, Delicious Grizzly, who's been talking up Kenneth Gainwell. And
Gainwell
kind of got me on him a little bit.
No, I've been doing the mental calculations of so there's the Trey Sermon smoke is starting now. Then we got that report from the Athletic Eagles guy that they might stash Penny on IR just to keep him on the roster, but not have to cut him.
Mm-hmm.
And if my prior is Trey Sermon stinks, which he does, my prior is that DeAndre Swift was traded for a 4th round pick. And Eric Eager said it best. It was to add to the legend of Howie Roseman, right? It's a 4th round pick. Doesn't really matter for the Eagles because they have so many, but he's getting great pub because people know who DeAndre Swift is, right? DeAndre Swift is a name. People know him. They saw him on Hard Knocks. He was a 2nd round pick, Georgia, yada, yada. DeAndre Swift is the 4th highest paid running back on the Eagles roster. I think, one, the idea that he's like set up for this bell cow role, and 2, I don't think he is a stone lock to make the 53 either. I think he's like 85%.
The Athletic guys think he is. They think it's Swift and Gainwell who are locks. That's what I read.
I think the locks are Gainwell and Scott. I think those are the 2 locks.
I don't think Scott's a lock at all.
He's $1.9 million guaranteed. They're not cutting him.
I don't know, man. I mean, they could.
Scott is the highest paid Eagles running back. There's a little bit of trivia here on the program.
They'll probably carry 4, right? So it's Sermon's going to get cut.
4 with a healthy scratch,
which will be Scott, most likely.
Well,
but it could be Penny, or it could be Penny starts the season on IR, and Sermon's the healthy scratch, and Scott's active. But it won't be. I don't think it'll be Gainwell. He also got talked up recently as a receiver.
Yeah, Gainwell's playing, and the bet is the guy in your Discord is right, which is that the bet that people the role that people think Swift has is actually the role that Gainwell has, and Gainwell is actually ahead of Swift.
I would not be shocked. I would assume that Swift is ahead of Gainwell, but I would not be shocked if we just have that wrong.
He's ahead of Gainwell until they ask him to run inside once, and he bounces it outside instead, and tells the running back coach, "I didn't want to get hit, dude."
Let me let me pour a little cold water on Gainwell. Miles Sanders missed 3 weeks last year, week 8, week 9, and week 10. Gainwell's snap percentages in those 3 games, 31%, 19%, 31%. And they just moved Boston Scott into the lead role. So I'm a little skeptical that Gainwell has much contingent upside outside of like a 30% receiving role in this offense. Like, I don't know. I'm just remembering last year, I was so excited when I had him on a bunch of teams because I was in on him last year. He is not a guy where when the lead back went down, he grew into a larger role. And I think in half PPR, like I'm still to like pick 190 or whatever. I'm not saying Gainwell is like a bad pick now, but I don't know, man. I'm like, what do you win when you win with Gainwell? I'm a little skeptical that they view him as a guy who can carry the load in this offense.
Well, I think one thing in analysis with us that we don't have access to the playoff data is handily, and he had 30 snaps, 34 snaps, and 38 snaps in the 3 playoff games, which I think I don't know the totals, but that's pretty good.
I believe he led the Eagles backfield in snaps in the Super Bowl.
I believe he did as well.
He did.
And it's also, it's totally fair that probably a reason some of those snaps are so low in the games that Sanders missed is because they were probably just blowing out teams so they could just put in Scott for the carries, right? So, but that's the thing.
About
like
half the snaps. Hurts played 67, 68, and 74 snaps in those 3 games. So he's playing like half the snaps in the playoffs.
It's just this like weird parlay though with Gainwell where like if they're blowing out teams, which will probably happen a good bit, like he's probably not the guy getting the goal line touches and the, carries between the 20s. I guess in passing scripts, he's getting the work, but he's also competing with Swift there. So I get the bet totally at pick 180, but like, have we seen Gainwell like have much of a weekly ceiling in his NFL career so far?
In the playoffs, he was really good in the playoffs.
That's right. That's fair.
He had like a billion fantasy points against the Giants
but no one really like factors that in because we can't like average it into stuff and it doesn't like people forget about the playoffs as if they don't count. They do count.
He also had
playoff Lenny that one year that everyone.
He also had multiple.
Doesn't count.
Doesn't count, right? And then the following year he took over the backfield, and it's like, well, he was the guy they trusted in the plaffs.
Maybe that matters.
Maybe we should have factored that in.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Sorry, Dave,
I don't know.
What were you about to say?
He had multiple target spike weeks, despite being like a 30% target share guy as a rookie or a 30% snap share guy. I think that Swift is a horrible bet at his price. If Swift was 15 picks cheaper, I could see myself snapping off a lot of him just because he becomes an asymmetric bet at that range. But where he's going now, I'm like, dude, there's a chance DeAndre Swift plays like 14 snaps a game for the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think that's likely, but it's way more possible than the guys he's going around.
Yeah, I think if the bet in total is just ambiguous backfield, elite offense, like that's the bet. And so if you can get the cheapest guy who's likely to make the roster, I think that's how you capture upside, with very little downside. So Gainwell, I've actually really come around on, right? I kind of like mixing him in, not because I think he's the most likely guy, but I'm just getting him for free. Whereas like Swift is the most expensive. He's going to make the roster, but like his projected role is pretty similar to what we would project Gainwell to have if Gainwell just ends up beating him out, which is not crazy given that the team just gave up on him. And he's only got a 4th-round pick behind his name now. And then Penny isn't a lock to make the roster. So I've started to cool on Penny. And I love betting on Penny because I think he's such a talented rusher, and I think he'd be such a good fit with this Eagles like offense when they're maybe not up by 3 scores, but when they're up by 1.5 or 2, they're gonna lean on him and he can score a bunch of touchdowns. But is pretty expensive for like doesn't make the roster or starts the season on IR. Like it makes me a little queasy.
That's what I've taken very little Penny in post-draft stuff just because the pre-draft stuff I was so overweight that like now I just feel that the risk of a dead roster spot is too high.
I cannot take Penny at running back 37 right now.
I think I would. So this is like a nuanced take where if I hadn't loaded up on him pre-draft, I probably would be fine with the price. But the fact that I have is making me just say, hey, if Penny's a smash, I got plenty of bullets where he's going to be a smash already. So, one question. If the Eagles played the Giants in week 17, Boston Scott would be what, like a 4th round pick?
Yeah, running back 35.
2 touchdowns, lock it in.
Yeah, I like him more than Mattison.
Yeah. Okay. A couple other things here. I don't think we need to talk about too much. Jeff Wilson and Mostert are down. I think that's pretty obvious. Kittle is down for who knows what reason. That doesn't make any sense to me. But the tight end prices, as we talked about, continue to be cheaper than they were last year, especially for like the second or third tier guys, whatever you want to call like the Kittle, Hawkinson, Pitts, Goddard tier. Those guys are pretty cheap.
It's totally irrational. It's totally irrational.
Kittle should actually be going up as it becomes more clear that Purdy's going to be ready.
He should be going up. Exactly right, man. He should be going up, and he's going.
I take all these 49ers right now. Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Elijah Mitchell. I take all of them right now because the other thing is quarterbacks are getting cheaper. But with so many of my teams not having an elite quarterback, I want to take 3 a lot. And Purdy, you could still get like 15th, 16th round.
And the thing is, like, okay, is the key to the season really going to be like draft Chiefs wide receivers and the 49ers? Like, could it be that easy? But like the way the ADPs are setting up, like it could be that easy. Like, the other thing too is that like, I like the Commanders wide receivers coming back. I like where McLaurin's priced. I like Dotson.
And they fit. The way you build your teams is, okay, I take Kittle, then I take Dotson. Like you could just get right through it. Yeah.
And I take Brian Robinson and Gibson. I think they're both. Robinson is now starting to go behind Gibson sometimes, which I also think is irrational. Like
that's irrational.
They are planning to start Brian Robinson.
Irrational?
You think we're irrational?
Gibson is the much better bet. Don't get not
at the same cost.
No. Don't get too bogged down in the scoring system because that's exactly what it is. Brian Robinson's better bet in a format.
No, that's not what it is. It's that he's the starter and they're using him in the receiving game as well. Like
he was better. Like any rushing stat you look at last year, he was better than Gibson in any rushing stat you look at last year, and he got shot before the season.
Let me tell you a secret about Brian.
Like, come on, guys. Like, better in every rushing stat and literally was shot before the season. Like, come on.
I think there's a couple where Gibson's better, but I like that.
Receiving stuff, maybe, but I don't know. Like
Gibson is just like if you look at all the stuff we like to look at in terms of like profiling guys, he's a better player. And this horrible, no good Antonio Gibson is a loser. Who we got to draft at running back 40 season that he just had came in with 900 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 58 targets. Like I
like both of them.
It's a bet I really like to make.
So Sam's right, by the way. The one stat I thought Gibson had been ahead on was NFL Next Gen's rush yards over expected, but he wasn't.
Nope.
Brian Robinson was like decently better. He performed above expectations and Gibson was below. Robinson also had a better success rate than Gibson, which is like kind of why Robinson's ahead, I think, is that like he does running back stuff. He hits the right hole. They trust him to kind of be a reliable running back, not a converted receiver. And I think that I do think, listen, I don't want to pay like a big premium for that, like a 5th round, 6th round price, just because like the coaches like a guy and I don't think he's that talented. Like I hate doing that. But if it's in the 9th or 10th round, like I'm getting the guy that the coaches want to start and was like an okay rusher last year and is in a total 0 in the passing game. Like it feels like picking up coins on the sidewalk. Like I'm like, all right, sweet, like free money. And then what do I get for that free money? Like I get to load up on wide receiver earlier. Robinson's kind of that 0 running back guy for me right now, even though he's gross. He's not as sexy as Gibson.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think all 3 of us like both of them. I think that's fair to say. So like, I don't want to like argue.
I liked Gibson more when he was significally cheaper. Now
exactly. Yeah.
Price. It's closing. It's closing a little bit because virgins are in on Gibson.
Yeah,
myself included. I mean, I like Gibson a lot more just because I can tell myself such a story about Gibson, whereas Brian Robinson The story I tell is that he just is 3 yards and a cloud of dusting his way to 16.5 points.
Yeah.
Why can't remember after David Montgomery's rookie season when we were like, Montgomery sucks. We have no interest in Montgomery. But like, and guess what? David Montgomery does kind of suck, but he had a decent stretch in his second year where he was like running all over terrible defenses, and the team, as we thought they would, used him a lot. And like, I think Tariq Cohen got hurt at the end of that season, and so that helped his snap share.
Yeah.
But like, in a sense, he does also have contingent value, because if Gibson were to get hurt and they're just like, well, Chris Rodriguez isn't it, we're going to just like ride this guy. Robinson's the guy who could, have a 75% snap share pretty easily if Gibson misses time. So,
yeah.
I mean, that coach's trust on early downs, I think, is helpful. It's not everything, but it is helpful. And you're paying like very little for it. You're almost like paying nothing for it at this point.
No, you're paying nothing. And I mean, it sounds like I was joking a little bit, but like he literally got shot like a month before the year. Like, is it not impossible that like severely impacted his training and like?
No, I think
with the offense. Like,
I think you are 100% correct. I think I totally buy your point. Like, I think
he could be better. He could be better than he was last year. Like,
well, we say that about pretty much every second year back. Is that I was drafting some Najee Harris who I thought stunk as a rookie, thought stunk last year, and thought stinks now. But I drafted the most of them last year because I was like, he's a second-year player. Like, who knows? Like, Le'Veon Bell had terrible efficiency and then was amazing as a second-year guy. Like, that first offseason is helpful.
But anyways, back to the Davis's. Well, both of your guys' points around Washington, San Francisco. The stack is pretty cheap. It's kind of in the middle here. I mean, basically, this chart is interesting, right? Because it's like Kansas City, Cincinnati is like very expensive. And then it's a bunch of games that are all kind of similar, like Miami through Baltimore all the way through Washington through San Francisco. It's kind of like similar prices on these stacks, which is interesting. There's not really like huge standouts, but it's, for how good San Francisco is expected to be this year. Like, I think they still have the third highest Super Bowl odds or something like that. Like, I think the San Francisco stack, if you hit on the right guys, has a ton of upside relative to cost. So I'm definitely with you guys there.
Still don't have. I'm much more open to taking Purdy now. I would say I'm like kind of mildly targeting Purdy now.
Yeah, he's my most drafted quarterback in Best Ball Mania 4 right now.
Interesting. Yeah,
well, it's not like I'm trying to do it, but he just is always there. He's all like, compare the ceiling that we have already seen Brock Purdy do. We've already seen multiple 30 burgers out of Brock Purdy in NFL games that count against the standings, and compare that to what your base expectation for CJ Stroud and Bryce Young is. It's almost the only thing keeping Purdy from going where Derek Carr goes is that the 49ers have not had a press conference saying Purdy is healthy and will be our starter in week 1. That's it. The second when they do that, when it's time to come in for training camp and Purdy, I believe actually the date they said they were going to know, Purdy like goes back into his surgeon to be reevaluated pretty soon. And whenever that happens and they do that report and they say he's ahead of schedule, he's on schedule, he's behind schedule, that's going to be an inflection point for his price.
I agree. And you can stack it up. I mean, if you don't get Purdy, like I had a team where I drafted. You can take Howell if you want, but you just don't need either quarterback. Like I've done this since the beginning of,
Come on, Pat, just say the name. Who's the quarterback in Washington you're taking?
I'm not taking Brissett. I don't see why I need to be right. Like, why do I have to be right? Yeah. I just don't want to be wrong, right? There's points in this game. How do I get those points? Well, Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Elijah Mitchell, Christian McCaffrey all seem like awesome bets. Dotson, McLaurin, great bets. Now I need to like make a kind of a shitty bet on Jacoby Brissett or Sam Howell. Like, no, I don't want to make that bet. Why don't I make a bet on Anthony Richardson and get him single stacked and not have to worry about that shit? Like I love the Anthony Richardson, and you just take one of Alec Pierce or Josh Downs, and that's it. That's the only. It's the only thing you do. I'm done,
it is good.
I can get Downs if I want to double it too. I could take a Jelani Woods, tack on something like that. Like I can get that so cheap, and then I have this other game stack. sniping me on Purdy is like, it does nothing to me. Like I have a Kittle. I think it was Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo on a team, and I didn't get Purdy, and I don't fucking care. Like, because guess what? What if Purdy misses the first 6 games, and he's like it actually would have hurt me to take him. Like I'll be fine with that Purdy point. I'm usually in that build. I will have at least one early quarterback. Sure, if I didn't have Purdy and I have like Derek Carr, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud, like that fucking sucks. But if I have taken care of quarterback early, I don't mind it. And you can target Purdy as your quarterback too. Or you can figure out quarterback 2 elsewhere and you'll be fine.
I think one thing, this isn't quite on the level of like Jameson Williams having 1 catch last year, but like I feel like I've been psyoped with the Sam Howell week 18 game last year.
He had 40
Dude,
rushing yards.
His passing stat was 11 for 19 for 169 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. I know he added some rushing, but I feel like when people talk about that game, like in my head, I thought he threw for like 300 yards or something, but 11 for 19, like I don't know. It's
at this point, I think Howell is becoming an even worse pick than he's been all offseason. And I think he's been a terrible pick all offseason because just play the game from the Purdy side. If you're insisting that you must take a quarterback from that game, take Purdy. And like take Purdy and single stack him. Like if you have one take Purdy and Elijah Mitchell. Just bet on the 49ers. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Why do you need to be right that Howell's the guy all season? It's a thin bet. It's a very thin bet.
Yeah. I think you actually just hit on like a larger point, which almost never gets discussed when we're talking about why stacking is so effective and so good in this format, which is like, obviously, yes, you need to score the week 17 points, but there's this other sort of hidden element that people just totally overlook, which is that stacking is going to help your weekly scores by quite a bit, because the weeks where your Brock Purdy gets 30, week 8, Brock Purdy gets 33, you probably also just got at least 1 spike week with your stack. It improves your regular season scores by quite a bit too. Maybe not on a median. Maybe Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo score the exact same number of fantasy points over 17 weeks, but the way in which it impacts the scores available to your lineup is going to be really beneficial.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think there's certainly something to like the layering aspect there, where if you kind of heavily stack 2 or 3 offenses, the odds that one of them is going to go off in any given week and like count a lot towards your roster points. Like I don't have math or hard numbers to back that up, but I definitely buy that that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess call up Aiden or Leone to verify that I'm not just talking out of my ass, but that is my intuitive sense of it.
Same for me.
You don't have to be perfect in these, week 17, not every player is going to hit your lineup. So you don't have to be perfect. Like you can have some misses. You can be directionally accurate with these stacks.
Yeah.
You don't want to draft guys who like don't play, at all season. That's going to hurt you. But like if you bet on an offense and that offense is awesome and mispriced, maybe they're not awesome, but they were too cheap. And that's going to help you in a big way get to the playoffs, get through the playoffs. If you're overstacked in week 17, like, I don't know that hurts you all that much. Maybe it will if we get like way sharper with this stuff, or field sizes start to get bigger and bigger. And, if I had to take down a 5,000 person tournament, I think I would be pretty sketched out by overstacking, because I need to be very, very right. I need to hit on like all the right spike week. Let's say there was a 500,000 final in best ball. You're going to need to essentially get all the correct spike weeks on one team, or at least you're going to have like, 75% of them or something. You can't like be mostly right. You're going to have to be pretty close to perfect, but that's not what we're doing right now. It's 441 in Best Ball Mania 4.
Yeah. I'm on the side of like, whenever I post a team and I get the feedback, like I posted one the other day. I took Daniel Jones, and then my last 3 wide receivers, I took Hodgins, Slayton, somebody else. It might've been Pilot or Wandale or something. And I got all this feedback that's like, oh, you're betting against yourself. Like all 3 of those guys can't hit. Like, guess what, guys? If my like 15th, 16th, and 18th round picks don't all hit in the same week, like I'm gonna be okay. Like Pat won Best Ball Mania with literally a second round pick, not counting towards his lineup. Like there's this weird perception with overstacking, I think, where it's like, oh, you're over correlating, it can't all work out. Like, great. That I understand that. Like, I'm not saying Daniel Jones is going to throw to 100 yards to each of Hodgins, Slayton, and Wandale in a single game. It's about getting one or two of those guys to hit your lineups at a very cheap cost. And just one. Yeah. And if you're 15th, 16th, and 18th round pick, if one of those guys hits
in week 17, or even week 15 or 16, I mean, like Slayton scores a long touchdown, and like it's also nice too if you have Daniel Jones, right? Like you have Daniel Jones, Darren Waller, and then you take like 3 stabs at Giants wide receivers. Like that is truly an overstack. But you get the Giants score points in week 15 and Slayton happens to score a touchdown. You've got your starting quarterbacks taken care of, your tight ends taken care of, and you got a meaningful week out of a very low value pick. I mean, we do not get many points out of these last round picks. You get something to hit your lineup out of there, it's huge. So like, yeah, you played like sort of conservatively in the end, like saying I'm making a bet on the Giants and I'm going to sacrifice a few picks to make this one bet. But the payoff is still well worth that. It's worth $3 of your team. You spent 3 late round picks on the Giants. It's like $4 of draft capital out of a $200 budget, if we were talking auction terms. Well, if you get that payoff that the Giants score points and one of those guys has hit your lineup, that's worth like the payoff on that $4 bet is fucking huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's some people saying like there's a huge price difference between like the Giants and Jags. And I get that point of it. I don't disagree with that like I'm more inclined to do one of these mega stacks on a team where all the wide receivers are very cheap. But like I think versus the field, I'm still more comfortable with these mega stacks than other people are because like, okay, I go with 49ers. I'm not saying this is like ideal, but I take, Ayuk, Debo, and Kittle on the 49ers. Are each of those guys going to hit their ceilings like at the same time in 1 week? No. And did I spend a lot to like get those guys? Yes, I get that. But if the 49ers offense is firing down the stretch, I kind of like the idea of like Ayuk doing nothing in weeks 15 and 16, but I'm carrying him to week 17 because I'm betting on the San Francisco offense just firing and, Debo and Kittle getting those spike weeks. And then I get to week 17, it's like Kittle chalk in the finals like it was last year. And I have this like correlated part of my bet that I'm like intentionally sneaking through. Like I think people misunderstand a little bit. Like you could survive weeks 15 and 16 with your 5th or 6th round pick contributing like nothing 15 or 16.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, absolutely you can. That's why this is such a fun game. Like you can, and we saw that 2 years ago with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Chase being the guy you needed in the final. But like you want to be conscious of like price, yes.
Yeah.
Can this offense actually support this many guys? But the 49ers are a great example where like I feel first of all, the price strikes me as just low on all of them, period.
Yep.
And then Ayuk, I'm not like hammering right now, but I think you could certainly make the case he's underpriced. Debo a lot.
He's getting rave reviews.
He's getting rave reviews.
All the guys are.
He's actually a sneaky riser on this chart, which we didn't talk about. So maybe because
I haven't taken a ton of him. He's the one that I probably need to get a little bit more bullish on. But Kittle, I mean, come on, you're getting him in the 6th round, like and
Kittle is a layup.
Yeah, I like both running backs. I'm happy to take McCaffrey at 3, and if he falls 4 or 5, I love that. Mitchell is one of my favorite targets in that double-digit range. So,
is there a third running back we should be taking? I mean, there's
Tyrion Davis-Price are alive.
I mean, close your eyes. It's week 5. Elijah Mitchell's turned his ankle. It's a Wednesday night episode of Ship Chasing. Peter Overzet is telling Corain not to say exactly how much they're bidding on Jordan Mason because it's over 400 FFPC free agency dollars, right? Like you could.
Well, you have it revert. The only thing you didn't get right there is that I'm yelling at Pete.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, like it's just but you can see that. Like you just, it's right there. You
and then
just see it happening.
The next stage of that is you spend $400 on Jordan Mason. Thursday, you get the Roto World blurb that they signed Tevin Coleman to a contract, and he's the guy you need. That's definitely the next thing that
well,
happens.
you
he was on the
definitely put in
roster last year, right? Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, he
put
played.
in your $2 bids for Tyrion Davis Price, week four waiver wire drafter.
Yeah,
make sure to do that.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman had 12 carries and 3 targets and 2 touchdowns as a member of the 49ers last season.
That's crazy.
That's what's always so funny is like you always underrate how many of these veteran running backs like truly
just show up
from the great. Like Latavius Murray had like legit spike weeks down the stretch last year for the Denver Broncos.
And by the way, he's on the Bills right now. He'll probably be cut from the Bills, but he's showing back up on someone's team this year.
Yeah.
That's why I keep taking Fournette. He's the cheapest of those guys that I think. Yeah. Hunt is the pure cheapest, but I'm a little bit more worried about him. But it's an argument for taking Hunt too. Like the NFL is chaotic. These guys are gonna get snaps from someone.
These guys that teams historically have trusted. Like I think it's underrated. Even like Latavius, you want to spend an 18th round pick on Latavius Murray. I'm not doing it. It's certainly disgusting, but like
he's so old that it makes it tough.
It's so old, yeah. But it's like he's just a guy that coaches trust. Like even last year, even
33.
He got more guaranteed money than Damian Harris, which is the weirdest part of this whole Bills thing. I do not understand how that happened, but he did. Anyways, I want to talk about this chart quickly. So you guys have seen this positional ADP chart that we've done a bunch. I just took a slightly different look at it. And so starting with the running backs, what this chart is showing, it's a little complicated. But it's showing these green bars here are the year-over-year difference in running back positional ADP. So look at this -2 here on the far left side. That -2 means the RB1 last year, Christian McCaffrey was going at pick 1 overall, and this year he's going at pick 3, right? So that's a 2-spot difference in positional ADP versus last year. So what I kind of wanted to show here is just like we hear a lot about how the running backs are a lot cheaper than they were last year, but I think it is sort of important to note like where they are most cheaper versus last year versus where they're actually kind of like similar, just so we can understand like how this year's draft landscape is reacting to last year's results. And I think there is sort of this clear trend where you look at this like pink box here, running backs 2 through 17. So that's everyone from Austin Eckler at running back 2 to Aaron Jones at running back 17. Those are the guys that are going significantly cheaper than last year. So it's some of the guys in the 2-3 turn. It's your Ramondres, Brees, etc. are grouped in there. And then also sort of like the early dead zone guys are going much cheaper. But then like look at this blue box here, running backs 33 to 49. Those guys are on average just 2 picks cheaper versus 2022. And that's a range where running backs historically smash. That's where we saw, Kenneth Walker last year, Ramondre last year, all these guys that were mega smashes in that range, but they're actually not cheaper really this year compared to last year. If you sort of
they are a little bit,
but if you average that whole group, right. And like, this was arbitrary ranges. Like you could pick it differently, but they're not as cheaper as the early round running backs are, is the point I'm trying to make. So like everyone is kind of like doing the strategy of like fade the early running backs. And then I'm going to catch up with these like 0 RB targets later. Like,
are they doing it? Is everyone doing that? I'm not seeing a lot of that. And that's not really what I'm doing.
Well, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm just saying ADP wise, here's the fact. Like running backs 2 through 17 are 11 picks cheaper than they were in 2022. Running backs 33 through 49 are 2 picks cheaper. So it's like a full round cheaper versus like 2 picks cheaper. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that like this doesn't mean that like you have to like search for the guys that are the ranges that are most cheapest versus last year, and that's what you should be targeting. I'm not saying that's a strategy. I'm just saying like that's how drafters are reacting to the draft landscape this year. Is they're saying let's fade like the early or the late RB1, early RB2 prices like significantly. Let's like slightly fade.
They're saying let's not draft the RB1s as early as we did last year, I think is the way to put that. They're not necessarily fading, because what is happening is these guys are being selected. And I
Yes.
think what might be happening as well is that I actually don't, maybe like Hayden or someone could put this together, but my guess is that RBs are being drafted on a greater number of teams through the early rounds than last year. That, like, if you look at how many teams in a given draft have an early round running back, a higher number of them have an early round running back this year than last year. So in a sense, I think, like, if there's 12 teams
have an early round running back this year versus last year,
if there's 12 teams in a draft, right, then I don't know, last year, let's say like 7 of them had an early round running back.
How are you defining
maybe that's too low.
Like
whatever this
1 and
range
2?
is.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Rounds one through 3.
Okay.
How many of these teams have have a running back through the first 3 rounds? I would guess that more of the 12 teams have at least one running back through the first 3 rounds than last year. That, like, on average, probably like 10 teams have at least one running back now. Maybe it was only 9 last year or something like that. Because it's easy. It's just easy to take these guys. And maybe I don't take 2, but I'm way more comfortable taking 1. Just from personal experience, I have a lot more teams that have at least one running back through the first 3 rounds than I did last year.
So, Pat, I think like maybe where I'm getting lost there is I agree with you that, like, me as a drafter, I have more early round running back teams than I do last year. And I understand that you do as well. But I'm pretty skeptical that on average, more people have early running back teams this year than last year, because last year there were like 20 running backs going in the first 3 rounds, and this year there are like 12. So, like, I just have if you're defining early round running back as the first 3 rounds, like, nearly twice as many running backs were going in the first 3 rounds last year compared to this year. So, like, I'm pretty skeptical that that's true. Like, I don't actually have that calculated from last year.
Yeah, you're right. It might not be true. I think what the biggest hit to drafting style has been going 3 running backs, it's much harder to go 2 running backs. So I think the biggest thing with what is causing this is not that there's a bunch of people fading all early round running backs. Certainly that there are people going 0 running back, but I think relative to last year, I don't know. It's like tough for me to see that being the main driver of this. I think that what is more likely the main driver is that more teams are just doing 1 or just doing 2 that might have otherwise done 3, and that you're seeing thinner running back rooms, maybe not a ton of 0 running back rooms relative to the number of 0 running back teams last year.
Yeah. I mean, it could be possible that there's more 1 running back teams this year. And yeah, like, I see your point that there's a way to, like, make the math work out, but, like, I don't know, like,
0 running back teams could be up for sure. But I guess what I would say is if they are up, my guess is that, like, 1 running back teams are also up. Like 2 and 3 running back teams must be down. They must be down significantly.
Yes,
right?
2. That's what I'm saying.
Drop.
Yeah. 2 is, like, has to be down. And that's, like, maybe part of the reason why I've been looking at this. I also looked at Chad Mashkey, could be messing up his last name there, but he did some work in the Badge Bros Discord where he pulled a bunch of data together. And I was looking at 2 running back starts, because I kept hearing, like, taking running backs in rounds 2 and 3 is becoming, like, the chalk build. I'm like, mathematically that can't be true if there's 12 running backs going in the first 3 rounds. So, like, I wanted to push back against that. Like, wide receiver. A
great lesson that screenshots of teams on Twitter are not the temperature taker of the market, right?
Right. What did you guys find that? So wide receiver, is that chalkier than wide receiver, 2 wide receivers and a running back through the first 3?
No, that feels like the most chalky build.
That's the chalk build, right? 1 running back through 3.
Yeah, 1 running back through 3 is certainly the most popular, but 3 wide receivers is more popular than wide receiver, running back.
Okay. Yeah, I would.
It might not be.
Sure.
It's probably. I didn't quite cut the numbers this way. Like, 2 running backs, no matter where you took it. It could be round 1 and round 3, round 1 and round 2. that's probably slightly more popular than 3 wide receivers, but it's actually quite close, which makes sense, right? Like if there's 18 wide receivers that go in the first 3 rounds, there's 12 running backs. So that means on average teams are taking 1 running back, just like 12 divided by 12, and 1.5 wide receivers. So like it should be true that the odds of like taking 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs is like close. I'm making some jumps in logic there, but you maybe get the general point of that. So yeah, it's a different draft. Like, anyways, I think there's a lot more work to like thinking about these numbers, and we're at an hour 50 now. So like we'll skip through this for now unless people have other points. But I think it's just interesting, like when you're thinking about where you're drafting and you're thinking about getting discounts this year based on how the draft rooms are overreacting, like think about a little bit where you're getting the biggest discounts. Not saying base your entire strategy on that, but think about it a little bit.
I've got a great anecdote to really illustrate this entire thing. Chris Olave was the number 12 overall, 10th, or he was top 10-ish pick in the actual NFL draft last year. Jackson Smith-Njigba was the 20th pick in this year's draft.
I think Olave was like 12th or 13th, maybe.
12 sounds right. Let's call it 12.
Yeah.
Let's call it 12. Doesn't
right.
matter for this anecdote. Yeah. Very high NFL draft pick. His team really wanted him.
Jackson Hit it up a bunch to get him. Traded like multiple first-round picks to get him.
Yes. Jackson Smith-Njigba actually fell way later than NFL draft prognosticators thought to a team with 2 really good wide receivers with basically no injury history. Lockett has missed a couple games here and there. Metcalf, I believe, has never missed a game since coming into the NFL. And he's going about 35 spots in just raw ADP ahead of where Olave went last year. Like people are the piss boy cabal loves wide receivers, and they really love rookie wide receivers. To the point that, look, I don't want to have 0 JSN, but trying to tell yourself a story where Jackson Smith-Njigba has an advance rate above average of above 8.3% without Lockett or Metcalf getting hurt, you literally can't. There's no math you can do.
I think you can.
Oh, I know you love Smith-Njigba.
I know that you can.
I can.
Tell me the math-based story where 6th round JSN going ahead of Tyler Lockett has an advance rate above 8.3%.
I think you could even say 5th round. He's going at pick 59 now.
He's on the 5th turn. Yeah. He's technically 5th round. Yeah, it's definitely tougher in the 5th round, but I think in the 6th round, he plays a lot. They play more 3 wide receiver sets than expected. He gets targeted at an extremely high rate when on the field, which seems extremely plausible to me, given that he gets open really quickly, and Geno Smith likes to throw short, and he's very accurate to the short area. And he doesn't like pass Tyler Lockett in 2 wide receiver sets, but he's not a pure slot receiver. They're willing to move him to the outside. They're willing to move him around the formation, and they are willing to have Tyler Lockett not run every single route in order to get JSN on the field beyond just kind of a pure slot receiver level of routes. And if he's in that type of situation and earning targets at a really high rate, then he can easily have an above average advance rate. And then, in the playoffs, it really would be nice if it's down to him or Metcalf or him or Lockett.
Or if he just at that point, Tyler Lockett's 30 years old, whatever.
Or if he passes him by the end of the season.
That I think the reason to take JSN has almost nothing to do with advance rate for me. It's all about him turning into a Amon-Ra St. Brown in the playoffs.
That's the reason to take him. But I think he can do that and have an above average advance rate.
These are the target totals for the 3rd leading target getter
like 10%.
in Pete Carroll offenses. 3rd last year, Noah Fant
18%.
with 63. 2021, Gerald Everett with 63. 2020, we got David Moore with 47. 2019, we've got Jacob Hollister with 59. The point being, this would be a huge break from the way the Seahawks have played. Now, you want to get down to brass tacks, you can say their 3rd tight end played 44% of the snaps last season. Colby Parkinson played 44% of the Seahawks snaps. Marquise Goodwin played about 35%. Dwayne Eskridge played about 15%. Give him Goodwin snaps. Take half from the 4th wide receiver. Take half from the 2nd tight end and from the 3rd tight end. And all of a sudden, you're up to like the same snaps you'd expect from like Quentin Johnston or whatever.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say too is that with these highly condensed offenses, you can read that as this offense only has enough room for two guys, or these coaches believe in getting their best playmakers the ball. Like, do the Dolphins, does that flow through Waddle and Tyreek Hill because Mike McDaniel's like been unable to get other people the ball? Like, or because he doesn't want to get other people the ball. He wants to get Waddle and Tyreek Hill as many targets as he possibly can. So if JSN is really good, which is the whole bet is that he's awesome. So far, so good on that front. He's having really good training or OTA reports. They talked about how they are playing some on the outside already. DK Metcalf was talking up what a professional he is. They're like, we just need to give him the playbook. Like, he has everything down. He just needs to learn all the plays, and he's going to be hitting the ground running. It's exactly what you want to hear because JSN, that's the bet. The bet is he's a ultra professional wide receiver despite being a rookie. He's going to be able to have incredible route running technique out of the gate, get open immediately, earn targets at a high rate. So far, so good. It's not like, I do think the market has done a good job in pricing in the upside here, but I don't think that he couldn't have an above average advance rate, even if he mostly is just that end of the season play. Like, again, I think he probably would be like 18% advance rate in an upside scenario. Like, I think it would be slightly above average, but
yeah. I guess like I'm fading JSN on Underdog, and I get I like Pat. You made all good arguments. Like I don't disagree with the thesis of what you're saying, but to me, there's a couple things. One, DraftKings, you can get him like a full round cheaper in PPR. He strikes me as like a guy that
even 2 rounds cheaper sometimes.
Yeah, he strikes me as a guy that pays off more in PPR than half PPR for sure. And to me, it's just in the 5th round, it's too much of a parlay that I have to hit. He has to be really good. He also has to be really good and better than Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf at like winning on the outside. He has to, like, Geno Smith has to continue his outlier performance from last year. Like, and also, I don't know, this isn't a fourth thing. I guess it's baked into what I originally said, but we're wrong about these rookie wide receivers all the time, especially in how they're going to produce in year one. And like, I don't know, man, like it's just, when I know I can get him 2 rounds cheaper on other websites, like I don't see any reason to draft him ahead some of these veterans that I know are going to be playing and I know are good at football. I'm not saying I think JSN's a bad prospect. I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but like the price doesn't make any sense to me, and like I don't see any reason to take him on Underdog. But
listen, if you want to just load up on DraftKings, I think that's a really sharp way to play this. I think the Underdog price is more efficient. I think it's because why should you get the upside that he offers late season as if that isn't what we're playing for? Why should you get that for free? You should have to pay for that.
I don't know. Like, I just think that like he could be really good, and like we could be right about liking him as a prospect, but we get to week 17 and he's slot only. He runs 60% of routes. I don't know. Yeah, like I just think those scenarios like I think that's like the median scenario. Like I think people are underrating Lockett here, but
I take a lot of Lockett. I take a lot of Lockett too. Lockett's, to me, the guy. I don't think Metcalf is at all appropriately priced. The idea of taking mid-3rd round Metcalf to me is like, I don't know that I've drafted him. Like I think he is priced incorrectly. So that's the one where I love taking Lockett where he goes, and I will take Lockett over JSN, especially if he's like my wide receiver 3. You know, if I've taken enough detours where I've already taken 3 detours through 5 rounds, round 6, and Lockett's there. Like I'm smashing Lockett, you know, even over JSN. So I need a professional wide receiver, but I think JSN does offer quite a bit of late season upside, so that should be priced in. Yeah,
that's fair. Anyways.
I've taken 2 DK Metcalfs. It looks like somehow I got to $17 on DK Metcalf. I've taken 2%.
DK Metcalf is in the range.
Wait, you have 2% DK Metcalf?
Yeah, I looks like 2 puppies and a poodle. I've taken DK Metcalf.
Dude, have fun staying poor. I
honestly think he might be the worst priced wide receiver on the market.
No, dude, No, you do not. I mean, come on, dude. He's the grownest fucking man in the NFC.
Yeah.
I've seen him with his shirt off. He looks great, but like you're having to pay up for this crowded wide receiver room. You're having to pay third round price. I can get a 5th or 6th round guy.
We're just fundamentally divorced on what we think JSN is going to get targeted at. So of course Metcalf's horrible for you.
I mean, dude, like which guy pairs better with Geno Smith? Like the guy who gets open immediately in the short area, which is like what Geno Smith is best at, or DK Metcalf, who's never actually drawn targets at a high rate. He's a big play guy.
There's no sell that's going to get me here. DK Metcalf had, 30 NFL touchdowns by the age of 24. He had 6 last year in what was like that to me is anomalous. I think you could argue, you could say the opposite. You could say Metcalf isn't the good fit with Geno and Lockett was the better fit or yada, yada, whatever. I'm not buying it.
I would not take JSN over DK Metcalf. I want to be clear on that.
I know, but if you think that the JSN price is more appropriate, and I'm saying I'm having a hard time getting there, your mental piece of pie division amongst the Seattle wide receivers is going to be different than mine.
Yeah, fair enough. To me, the Lockett is if you want to play this through a veteran, Lockett is. I mean, just talk about Metcalf versus Lockett. Lockett has shown a bigger weekly ceiling.
Metcalf has earned a lot more targets than Lockett the last 2 years. Like a lot more. Like over 1.5 per game more.
Let me see what
I don't have that pulled up.
Yeah.
But it looks like raw targets would be that's about right for last year. I don't know if either of them missed any games, but
Lockett has missed 1 game each of the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Lockett has a 21% target per route run. Metcalf is at 25%.
Yeah.
That is better.
Metcalf is better. Metcalf is better than Lockett. Like a lot.
Metcalf is better than Lockett. Yeah.
I wouldn't say. I don't know.
I don't want to pay 3 rounds for it, but
this is where I'm just like they're both so good and I don't know. I just feel like taking crazy pills with the JSN stuff sometimes because it's like he could be like a solid hit as like an NFL career and as like a pick in the first round, but not be very relevant in year 1. Like, I don't know. That seems like the most likely outcome to me, but
yeah, that does not seem like the most likely outcome to me. I think he's a very strong prospect who's drafted in the first round. Great fit for what they need. I think he's going to make some noise. I don't know that he'll be like a guy you had to have or anything, but like if we're trying to figure out how to play this offense, saying the most likely scenario is that this really strong first round prospect doesn't do much, I think that's a risky way to approach this. I think that's why I don't like Metcalf. He's the most expensive guy in the offense. So you're saying JSN's not going to do much, and I'm going to bet on that with the most expensive guy.
The one who gets squeezed if JSN is as good as you think is Lockett. Lockett is the one who Metcalf is not going. Metcalf is going to get 140 targets, 87 catches, and between 900 and 1100 yards, like just based on the variance of the deep throws to me.
But to take Metcalf, right, you're taking him over some of these third round running backs that are great picks. Like we just talked about how those. I
don't even have a ton of Metcalf because I do what you're saying. I take Jacobs or Ramondre or Brees or Derrick Henry or whatever there a large chunk of the time. But I'm not coming in saying like I'm clicking, like there's such a huge tier break there. Like I'm not taking Calvin Ridley, over him. I'm just not doing.
You rarely even get that choice though.
Sure.
He goes usually ahead of Debo. So, and I like Debo more than Metcalf.
Yeah, I like Metcalf more than Debo.
Okay. That's probably why I don't have much Metcalf is because I'm happier to take Debo, but then I get to Ridley, Cooper, Keenan, that whole tier. If DK was sitting there, I would 100% mix him in. Sure. Like to me that the tier break has broken. Like that is like Hopkins could sign with the Browns and we're like, why was I taking Amari Cooper again? He's not all that big of a bet on talent play. So yeah, if Metcalf was like an early 4th round, I would feel a lot more comfortable. But it's just like instead, I know it's not like that many total picks, but there's a big tier break at running back, and he's included in this previous tier of wide receivers that I don't think he's a part of. It'd be like if Keenan Allen was going in the mid-third or something. I'd be like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, I'm with that.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think it is a little weird how.
Well, I'm not with that, but I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah. If anyone wants to book bets with me on JSN, like versus basically any wide receiver, like the next like 12 wide receiver, not 12, up to Jahan Dotson, all those wide receivers that go after JSN, excluding Kadarius Toney, I'm taking him out of that. If anyone wants to book bets with me on that range of wide receivers scoring more points than JSN this year, and sure, if you want to like say, it's week 17, that's all.
Yeah,
that
but
matters.
that is the point, though. Like you're like, if you want to
no,
just
Pat,
ignore the whole thesis of the play. I'm happy to take that. It's like
you didn't let me finish that point. I'm saying if you want to structure it like last like 8 weeks of the season or something, who's scoring more points, you want to structure like that? Sure, I'll take you on that bet too.
All right, we should sit down. I think that's easy money for me.
Okay, let's get some bets going. Anyways, let's wrap things up. I don't think
another 2-hour show for the people. Just another Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
Can we just on that running back point? I do want to make one more observation on that chart. Because the way you had to make cutoffs at some point, but to me, like what I see here, and Hayden also had a chart that showed something pretty similar, is that there's running back value that peters out. It's the running back value is basically gone by running back 40, and it starts to get less and less as the draft goes on. So to me, the bucketing approach kind of hides that a little bit. Like the larger trend is that there's a bunch of running back value that peaks around running back 12, and then it starts to slowly peter out for the rest of the draft. I would be aware of that, and that it does feel like that is the case to me when I'm in these drafts. Like Jamal Williams is kind of that cutoff. He's RB 42. I'm like, and that's right where kind of your RB42 is going like one pick ahead of last year. I'm like, that's where like I want to be done. Like I think to execute this stuff best, I would like to have at least 3 running backs by that point, maybe 4, and hammer. Like you can have your cake and eat it too. I think if you get like one of these early running backs, take advantage of one of those values, mix in a guy maybe in the 7th, 8th. You could also take 2 early. I'm totally fine with that. But like, be aware that the trend kind of stops. This value, maybe it comes back around again really late, but at that point, those are lotto tickets. So I would just say, like, to me, when I look at this, I'm like, I want to be overweight a lot of my favorites of this early group, and then I want to be making sure that my teams are structured so that I don't go into like round 13 with 2 running backs, because now I'm not getting any bargains on running backs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's just like, so on this chart where you can see where the running backs are actually more expensive than last year. It's a very small pocket in that blue box. I think it's like probably running backs 41, 42, and 43. That would be Elijah Mitchell, Jamal Williams, Jerick McKinnon. So yeah, Pat's point is correct. I agree with it. Like once you get there, the discounts on running back like versus last year no longer exist. That's not to say that those guys are bad picks. Like that's not the point. It's just that I think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think there is a conception that like, oh, running backs are values relative to last year everywhere through the draft. I just want to push back on that slightly, but I agree with how Pat phrased it for sure.
Will you take Pickens in that last 8 weeks of the season bet? Is Pickens viable?
Can I let's talk about it.
He goes before Dotson.
Does he go before Dotson?
Oh yeah, he does.
Ooh, that's on the border. I'll take that one.
All right,
but you have to give me some other ones too if we're gonna do that.
Well, you can't have Burks because I like Burks a lot.
I want Addison. I want Deontay. I want Treylon. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'll have to negotiate Treylon.
Okay. Let's talk our favorite values. Anybody want
Ty Chandler,
running
back 61, 197th overall. Ty Chandler. Yeah, I've taken him. I think every fast draft I've done this last week.
That's fair.
Finally, not a 5'7" wide receiver featured as my favorite pick of the week.
I mean, that one's gonna pay. I mean, actually, it's gonna pay off in the short term. I think there's like a chance.
I think there's
a chance it doesn't pay off. Yeah,
there's a chance
by August,
McBride
there's a
or
chance it doesn't.
Nwangu
Yeah.
ends up way ahead of him. Yeah,
it's a riskier pick than it might seem.
Yeah. Geez, I feel like I've done so many of my favorite ones so far. Yeah, go for it.
I had to jump you here, Sam, because I'm taking Brock Purdy. I'm taking your boy.
Oh God.
I've already. Have
you done Purdy?
Yeah. I mean, you can still do it, but I got him when he was quarterback.
You got him at a better value.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, I have to bet against his elbow. All right, I'll think of someone else.
You gonna take Darnold then?
Yeah. Give me Sam Darnold. No, absolutely not.
I'll take one. Actually, I don't even know if I believe in the ADP value here, but I'm scrambling. So here, Pat, let me go, and then I'll let you go. Jonathan Mingo. He's one of my highest exposure wide receivers at pick 131. Now, I don't know if the ADP value is going.
Kelvin Benjamin featured here on Sam Sherman's favorite pick.
to pay off. But okay, we've talked about it.
That would have been an amazing pick in best ball.
Pick 130, Kelvin Benjamin, give it to me. But I mean,
I know.
he's
I'm just being stubborn with him.
His profile looks a lot better once you factor in his foot injury. I know that his analytics profile does not look good, but they spent an early second round pick on him. Their other wide receivers are Adam Thielen, who we all agree is garbage. DJ Chark, who I think some people think DJ Chark has something left. Don't put me in that camp. I think he's close to done. So then you're looking at Hayden Hurst, Terrace Marshall. I mean, I just don't see how he's not at least playing in 3 wide receiver sets to start the year. And I think he dusts either Chark or Thielen pretty easily. And pays
wow, et tu, Brute. You're turning on Adam Thielen, man.
Wow.
Yeah, Thielen, my boy. But yeah, I'm taking Mingo. It's a good real life pick. I don't know if you're getting the CLV value, but draft Jonathan Mingo.
I'll go Kenny Gainwell, who we talked about earlier.
Okay.
I like that.
The only way, right? The way he pays off, you get teams talking him up as like one of their clear starters. Like it's definitely Gainwell. He's involved somehow, some way. And then Penny starts the season on IR or something, or gets cut. I mean, he just cannot hold this ADP if that happens.
Yeah. I like that. Awesome. Pat, anything coming up on Legendary Upside this week or otherwise?
I'll be having I'm gonna write tomorrow, and I'm not sure exactly which of like 3 articles that I have like started. I'm gonna work on whichever one strikes me. But hoping to get a piece out this week on Legendary Upside. I will note, in case you missed it, that we have Dynasty rankings now. That's in collaboration with Davis and Jacob Sanderson. So
and
check those out.
Our first podcast about those rankings is out on all of our feeds now too. So 2.5 hours, maybe even longer, honestly.
And we're doing another podcast this week on the Dynasty rankings. And the plan is to do a 3rd podcast next week, and then a mailbag pod after that. So there's lots of Dynasty content right now.
Awesome.
On Legendary Upside.
Great stuff. Davis, what do you have going on besides the Dynasty stuff with Pat?
We got that going on. I'm hoping to have some underdog. I've been tweaking around underdog rankings. So I had this conversation with Herzig last week, and I've changed and then reflipped on like if you should draft off rankings or just off ADP. So working on those. I'll probably put those out on the TakeCast Patreon sometime soon. Then TakeCast this week, Sports Grid Fantasy Football Podcast, all the good stuff.
Awesome. Well, yeah, be on the lookout for Davis's rankings. I think Derrick Henry's 5th overall in those rankings. But be sure to keep your eye out
in collaboration with David Kitchen. Those rankings.
You know, I only have. I was looking at it. I only have 13%, which feels pretty fraudulent considering how much. Because I want to take wide receivers there a lot, and also I take Pollard over him every time. So if I'm on the 2-8 and it's Pollard or Henry, I'm taking Pollard.
I'm taking Pollard there too. Yeah.
Yeah, but Jacobs or Henry, Jacobs or Ramondre, Jacobs or Breeze, or Henry or any of these guys, I got Henry every time.
That's fair. All right. I got nothing going on, but we'll be back next Monday for another episode of ADP Chasing. For Pat, for Davis, we will see you guys